We are back, episode 27 of the Auld Triangle, and I'm joined as always by Andy, Stevenson, Quilly and Barra. Later on, we were joined by FAI head coach Liam Shannon, who sets the record for the longest guest on the Auld Triangle, but it was an absolutely fantastic conversation. It was great to have him on, and we do appreciate the time. He came off a busy schedule over the weekend to speak with us about a ton of topics, and we do have a ton of other topics to talk about as well. Bellator 291 just finished, Iúr Championships, couple of fight announcements, a couple of fight fallouts. We're going to discuss it all over the course of the next hour or two. We're glad you're here. You're glad you're joining us. Hit the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms. You can get this podcast, if you prefer audio, anywhere you get your podcast, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts is where you can find the Auld Triangle. Hit the follow button. Give us 5 stars on Spotify as well if you like what you're hearing. And we'll get straight into it, guys. No introductions, big introductions today. We have a lot to discuss. So let's get straight into it. Bellator 291. Number one, fantastic job for yourself, Andy, in all the coverage you did, talking to all the fighters, and some great coverage throughout the event as well. You know, you're really getting in there and getting those interviews done. To me, it adds that extra bit of meaning as well. So credit to you. You were there. You were in attendance on Saturday night. Share your experience at the event in comparison maybe to previous Bellator events, Andy.
What's the crack, everyone? Yeah, it was I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the fight week. I always enjoy those fight weeks, really. It's just a bit of crack for really kind of being around the hotel on media day on Thursday, the weigh-ins Friday. Thankfully there was nothing too crazy going on. Speaking to Yaroslav Amosov was probably the highlight of my media day, just because this, you know, that his whole story kind of really left an imprint on me, and I was kind of just blown away by the guy from start to finish. I know we're talking Irish MMA here, but
no, 100%, 100%.
Like that was just mad. Like hearing kind of his experience, and then just seeing him perform in the cage. But yeah, we got through the media day. It was great to obviously see and cover all of the SBG fighters, and Jesus, as always, so many of them. You know, the fights themselves coming in, I felt were a little bit underwhelming, some of them, in that we talked ad nauseum about the matchmaking and things like that. I didn't really know what to expect, and there was definitely storylines, I thought, too. Like, I thought I was intrigued by the return of Richie Smullen back to Bellator. I was intrigued by, could Pedro Carvalho overcome that hurdle and get to a title shot again, and there was loads of other ones. How was Sinead Kavana going to look coming back from injury? Can Carl Moore push on? And then Kieran Clark undefeated. All of them. The fights themselves, I would say the event overall was not Bellator's. It was nowhere near the best event they put on there. I felt it was even just kind of noticing the crowd when I was in there. They had 2 sections cordoned off, it definitely wasn't a capacity set out. It just seemed a little bit flat. Now, as always, as time went on, they also started early. It was something like 4:30. It was the first fight. I actually didn't even get in for the first fight. I missed it. I was in for the second fight. So I saw Daniele Scottisi. That was the first one I saw. But yeah, it didn't have the big moments from the fights themselves. Like last time out, there was Carl Moore's huge comeback. There was a few other really big moments. Like, Kieran Clark's fight last time out. we cannot complain about Kieran Clark because he went in and took no damage and had a very dominant performance. But when you're in a fight where you're kind of getting beaten up and then you come back, like the crowd are just going crazy. Peter Quilly obviously lost again. Yeah, it wasn't the most energetic event I've been to there.
Yeah, 100%. Look, let's get into the fights. I'm glad you mentioned Yaroslav Amosov, because that's what I wanted to start off with as well. Normally we'll talk Irish mixed martial arts, but I think the story, the way Bellator encapsulated that story throughout the week, and performance, you can tell the story, you can build people up, but if you don't have the performance, it doesn't really mean that. Well, it does mean something in this case, because there's much more of a bigger fight than Yaroslav Amosov had to fight last Saturday night, obviously enough. But Quilcha, looking back on his performance, it definitely deserves a mention. I would want to label it as a masterclass, to be honest, because that's what it felt like to me. I get a little bit excited sometimes. I said after 2 rounds, I think I texted the group, he's putting on a clinic. After the fight was a masterclass. He did everything right. It was a phenomenal performance, and it deserves a mention this time around.
100%. It was dominance from start to finish. He looked incredible. I thought he looked big. He looked the bigger of the two, but I thought he looked huge for a welterweight inside there. But masterclass is probably the best way of putting it. After coming back with the story coming into this, and then the performance, it was perfect. That performance, I couldn't really see a flaw, and Storley looked out of ideas come round 3, round 4, to be honest with you. And it was a really good way to top off the night, because one thing I noticed, I was watching from home. I was unfortunately not the first one. I missed a long time, but I saw it pan to the crowd after his win, and like I saw the Ukraine flags all over the crowd. It looked like he got a really good reception as well. The worry I had was that people would actually leave the arena once, I guess, the local fighters finished up, but that wasn't the case, and he looked like he got a really good reception. And unbelievable all around. And I was really happy for him to get that win, because after everything he's been through, that story, it's just it's just incredible, and the performance topped it off.
Phenomenal. I was going to say that to you as well, Andy. You were there, and we haven't had, we've had some main events where the crowd haven't really been captured by their imagination, really, and we've seen people leave and everything. But it seems, that people, you had that Ukrainian support there, obviously enough, but some fans did stay around and enjoyed the show that he put on as well, and I was happy to see that as well.
Yeah, like I didn't see many people leaving at all. As you got kind of 4th, 5th round, people are, no matter who's on, really, people will leave because they want to just kind of avoid the crowds or whatever. I thought he had a great support. I thought the Irish really got behind him. And then additionally, there were definitely some pockets of Ukrainian fans, and as you said, the Ukrainian flags. And man, like, he's definitely one of the best fighters I've ever seen fight live, without a shadow of a doubt. And it was just, he blew me away with that performance. Like, he was just so vicious. Like, I feel like the fear coming into this when we saw that main event put on and scheduled was, could this turn into a boring grappling fight, and would fans leave? It was not that. It was, the vast majority of it played out in the feet, and like, he was just so ferocious. What really impressed me, like, he just didn't give Storley an inch. I found in the transitionary periods, anytime they were going from grappling to striking, or out of the clinch, or from up against the cage and breaking, he was just putting on a beating. And he looked like the guy who had been training for the last year straight, rather than, kind of having been away for a while and then coming back to training. I thought he looked much more in shape than Logan Storley, and yeah, just as you said, a masterclass. And what a win, what a story. And it was an honor to watch him live, and I was delighted that the Irish crowd got to watch that performance, because it's one of the best I think has probably ever taken place in Dublin.
Yeah, true that. That and McGregor against Brandau, for me, I think is up there. And you know what? When you're staring down the barrel of a gun in preparation, I mean, getting in there and fighting is the easy part, and he let none of that get in the way. And credit to Yaroslav Amosov, definitely worth a mention. On to the co-main event, guys, a little bit closer to home. The big question coming in here was, how would Pedro Carvalho deal with the grappling of Jeremy Kennedy? And we got a glimpse of that against Mads Burnell, where he did excellently against Mads Burnell, but unfortunately didn't go his way in the co-main event. A little bit of a mistake earlier on, maybe going for the guillotine rather than maybe trying to separate. And I felt Pedro's best chance was to try and win in the striking exchanges. But Jeremy Kennedy put on an absolutely grappling clinic, Quilcha. It was really, really good performance. He's been in there. He's probably wrongfully cut from the UFC. So he's a guy who's flying somewhat under the radar in the Bellator featherweight division. But, unlucky for Pedro, but, no shame in losing to a guy like Jeremy Kennedy, a guy with the class of Jeremy Kennedy. And Pedro, 27 years age, he's got plenty of time to dust himself off and come back as well.
You said it perfectly. Like, he's going in against the lad who is one of the best around. He probably shouldn't have been cut from the UFC, the great run there, only losing to Alexander Volkanovski. So it just kind of shows the level he was at beforehand, and he's only gotten better inside Bellator. And I think he was even disappointed with that performance as well. And I thought Jeremy Kennedy was very good, and nothing it should take nothing away from Pedro. Look, it's a loss. It's tough one, but it's against a very high level opponent, and that's what you come against at the top of the division. So, look, plenty of time to get back in there and pick up a few wins and climb your way back up for Pedro. But Jeremy Kennedy, clinical grappling performance, dominant, to be honest, really. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens next to Pedro. But either way, excited to see him back in.
Yeah, that's a question I'll ask you maybe, Andy. What do you think is next for Pedro? Is there anything or any name that's standing out to you that would be maybe a good matchup for him? You know, maybe he might want to maybe just take the time off and kind of figure things out, come back again in September. Is there anybody there in the featherweight division that really sticks out to you, or anyone you'd like to see him going in against next?
Not really. I pull up the rankings here and just have a quick look. Like, there's no name that really sticks out. If I'm being honest, like I don't think it really matters, if that makes sense. Like, I think he's going to have to do some rebuilding now. Like, he's kind of traded wins and losses, and I know he was in a spot here where this was a number one contender fight, but I think he'll have to win, 2-3 fights to be in that position again. Would be my guess, based on just how we've seen kind of matchmaking play out and things like that. But I ran into him afterwards in the hotel, and he seemed to be kind of just he was kind of like, look, I got held down for 3 rounds. There's not a scratch on me. And obviously, fighters tend to say that. And at the end of the day, resting and grappling, and, that's a big part of the game too. So just because you don't necessarily have any damage doesn't mean you haven't kind of lost comprehensively. And I did think he lost comprehensively here against Jeremy Kennedy. But, he's a guy that has dusted himself off and picked himself back up, and his losses on his record before. And I know he will come back and keep going. And, I don't think it matters so much who he goes in against next. And also, there's just not like.
Well, it matters in terms of.
I think a ranked opponent.
A ranked opponent, for sure.
Oh, yeah. But like, whether it's, I'm looking here, like Justin Gonzalez, Timur Kizriev, Daniel Weichel. He's obviously fought him before. Lucas Brennan. Scott Coker's talking about Jeremy Kennedy fighting Aaron Pico. I mean, maybe I don't think Pedro's fought Adam Boric yet, has he? I mean, that could be a fight, but that'd be a very.
I think he'd probably be looking down more so than looking up. Yeah. Justin Gonzalez seems like a name, 13-1. He's a really good fighter as well. I think that'd be a good matchup for Pedro, and I think you're probably going
a bit early for the Burnell rematch as well, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. That's the one that you could build up again. Let the two of them, obviously Mads will want to come back and get a win as well. But I'd be looking at someone ranked from 10 to 7 or something like that for Pedro. It'd be a good one. I'd like to see him in against Justin Gonzalez. That's the guy I'd like in there.
I mean, it's either Gonzalez, Kizriev, or Lucas Brennan. Then really. So big time. Gonzalez.
I'll stick with you, Andy. Peter Quilly, also unlucky in his fight against Bryce Logan, was competitive enough right until the end, and just got caught with that elbow. It was a beautiful elbow on the inside. Peter started off the fight well. Was moving forward, landing shots, pressure, and won the first round. In my opinion, second round was a little bit closer. It seemed to me like Bryce Logan was getting more into the fight. I think Sean said it on the big podcast. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. You were in there as well. Maybe it took a little bit of an adjustment for Bryce Logan to get used to the crowd, get used to the noise, and get used to the zombie walkout. It's one that, I mean, I was watching it on the TV with one of my friends who were getting goosebumps. I can't imagine what it's like. I witnessed it. I've seen Ash come out to that song before, but I mean, it has a little bit more kind of oomph to it now, and more people kind of, have attached themselves to it. Do you think that walkout affected Bryce Logan? Would you kind of attest that to his slow start before he got the finish?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know if it was that caused it. I mean, I think Peter Quilly also came out of the gates, quick at him. So I think that could have had an effect of, we've seen Quilly fights recently. I just immediately think of the last one against Benson Henderson, where it was 5 rounds of him just getting pressed up against the cage, really, and just ground out a really grappling one. And there was no get up and go from Quilly that to be seen in that fight, really, because Benson Henderson didn't allow him to. And in this one, I thought Quilly came out just out of the gates quick, really looked to hurt Bryce Logan early. So I think there's an adjustment period there as well when you've got someone firing on all cylinders at you, and then I mean, maybe I'm not saying that it didn't affect him. I didn't notice it myself. I wasn't really paying attention to that, I suppose, myself.
But I think it was clear that he got off to a slow start, and we can always speculate on what happened. But look, at the elbow came in the second round.
Vicious elbow, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a vicious elbow. It was a vicious finish, and it didn't put Peter out, but it wobbled him enough that he was unable to defend himself. It was just a shame. It's a game of seconds in here, and it always seems to be the case. Just as he was kicking him away, and just as he got his head clear to kind of separate him on the ground, it was the time when the ref came in. So maybe another 1 or 2 seconds he might have separated and composed himself. But that'd be a disappointing one for Peter now. I think it's. Having fought the guys at the top level of the division, the expectation was for him to come in here and get the win. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. Back to the drawing board for Peter. I don't quite think it's quite time yet for retirement, but where do you go next, Quilty, with Peter? What would you like to see?
Personally, I'd love to see the Cain Moussa fight rebooked, because that, I don't know, when that was first announced, I was really, really excited for it. I thought it was stylistically a good matchup, and it was exciting, and it get the fans going. To be honest, I think he's out of the rankings now as well. So give him someone outside the rankings that can maybe push him into it again. I think that fight would be a good one. You've England versus Ireland and Moussa versus Quilly. So I think that'd be a good one for the Irish crowd next time.
100%. Andy, I know you're a fan of the domestic fights, Irish versus Irish. You're calling for it, and rightly so as well. It does add that extra bit of meaning. Sean said on the podcast, or maybe made the suggestion, Quilly versus Miles Price too, perhaps might be the option. How would you feel about that? It's a kind of a fight I didn't know I wanted to see until Sean kind of said it, and it makes sense for everybody, really.
Yeah, I heard Sean saying that on the podcast. All right, and I'd be up for seeing that. I wouldn't want to be honest. I don't want to see the Cain Moussa fight next. And it's not that I think Cain would definitely beat Peter, but I would be leaning towards Cain in that fight. Just given, I didn't think Cain Moussa had any chance coming into that Georgie Carcanyon fight, and he blew me away. And I think given Peter's recent performances and the losses that he's had, I just think, I don't know. I think that's a more dangerous fight than obviously Miles is coming off is 3 losses in a row, or 2 or 3 he had in PFL, so they're kind of both in a similar position. And I do. I like those fights. I like those type of fights. I heard PT talking on the Ringer show about getting the Irish versus Irish back, and I agree. I just enjoy them. I think that they add a bit of spice to the cards. Bit that rivalry. I don't know. That rivalry, it was a bit of a. I didn't like that one the first time though, because it was like all the talk of the rat, all this kind of bullshit talk, and I'd watch it again though. Fucking,
I bet you would. Sure. Look, I think that added to it a little bit more. It added that little bit of spice. I mean, talk is talk. I mean, we're getting in here and we're boxing each other in the face. So I mean, sometimes
it's an appropriate one though, right? Where for both of them, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
When do they have that one? That was Quilly's debut back in 2019 for Bellator, so a bit of time has passed too.
Big time too, yeah. And look, and shout out to Peter, who we're going to talk about a little bit later on. He was at Iúr Fighting Championships the very next day, dusted himself off and put his fighters first. So all credit to Peter. It was great to see him there at Iúr the next day as well. And hopefully he gets a good solid matchup. Hopefully we see him back in September. And hopefully he gets back into the win column. We wish him the best. Moving on, guys, down along to Sinead Kavana next to... look, I guess... I don't understand. There's a little bit of controversy around this decision. I don't understand watching on TV. I'm sure you're the same watching live, Andy, as well. It was... early stages were round 2, but the more impactful shots were coming here from Sinead Kavana all fight long. Quilty, I have no understanding why there was controversy around this. Do you?
I saw calls of robbery and I was thinking,
bullshit.
What fight were you watching? Looking at the damage and the more impactful shots, as you said, and Kavana it was all her. The strikes, her hands looked great. I guess in the first round she was maybe shaking off a bit of ring rust, maybe not even ring rust, but getting the feel for it again after a long injury. And then in round 2 and round 3, she just came out of her shell a bit more. And much more impactful. Her boxing was clinical, to be honest, and that's what won it for, in my opinion. So yeah, I can't see shout robbery. I scored that 29-28 for Sinead, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. I can't remember how I scored. It was in it probably around that as well, if not 30-27. But you know, it was a solid performance, Andy. She, you know, I think it has to be kind of said here as well. It's not easy. She said 10 months. It was 10 months since she came back, or it was since
12.
the injury.
I think it was a year to the day.
A year to the day.
I'm guessing what she was saying is it was 10 months she came back properly training, I would imagine, and then straight into a camp for a fight.
Yeah. So that, like, to do that, and you know, you have that, it's impossible not to have that little bit of self-doubt, worrying if the knee is going to hold up. That's all there. I think to get in there and get the win the way she did was brilliant to see. And now she has something to build upon. Obviously, there's talks of the Cyborg fight. Me personally, I'd like to see her. Let's bring her over to the States and get her a fight over in the States, or maybe somewhere else on the European card midway through this year. Let her get another solid win, and let's bring that fucking title fight. Yeah, let's get that Leslie Smith fight, and let's bring Cyborg over in September and give Sinead what she wants, that title shot in front of her home fans. That's what I want to see, Andy. Are you along similar lines?
If I'm Bellator, I am 100% booking Chris Cyborg for a title fight in Dublin in September, and I'm waiting to see what happens with Katsangano and Liam McCourt, and then making my decision. If I'm a promoter, that's what it is. But I think that Sinead in the post-fight interview was like, Chris Cyborg, like, come on over, but fight the best in Ireland. And I think she has every right to say that. Like, she beat Liam McCourt. It's not a case where you've got two Irish women where they haven't fought each other and, you know, they both have an equal claim. Of course, Leah had a good win after that. And of course, now the thing is, though, if she goes and beat Katsangano, that's a huge staple win as well. So she also, they're both within their rights. But, you know, from the perspective of Sinead Kavana, she has every right to say, listen, I beat this other girl, like, with no disrespect, but I won, and I am the woman to beat in Ireland. So Bellator have a very good scenario on their hands here with Chris Cyborg fighting in Ireland. But yeah, like, to come back and put on that performance, I was really, really impressed with Sinead. Her distance management for me was just incredible. I thought that was the key to victory here for her, where it seemed that it was a very straightforward fight from what I saw. Was Sinead's boxing versus Janae's kickboxing, and Janae's kicks were landing in volume, but they were kind of, you know, almost like point fighting scores, whereas Sinead was waiting. She was sliding in and out of range and cracking her with a 1-2, and she may not have landed as many strikes, but as you said, more impactful, more damaging. I think that there's probably an element of confidence with Sinead as well, where prior to the fight she was talking about she didn't want the Cyborg fight next, and maybe she wanted one more. But how could you not think that way when you're coming back from a horrible injury and thinking, well, I don't know, like, and when she's already fought her and got knocked out and thinking, I want to be in my A game, it seemed to me that she had more confidence coming out of this fight here to say, right, no, actually I'm ready, and I'm ready. You know, give me a few months and I'm ready for her now.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that, but I'd still prefer to see that one fight and then keep it. Like, I think, you know.
Sorry, I probably didn't answer your question there at all, but yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. No worries. Yeah, it was great to see her come back. You know, talking about that distance control was spot on as well. And she mentioned that after the fight, where she needed to be a little bit more careful than the first fight, because she did get caught with that elbow and she got cut by the elbow as well by Janae Harding. So, you know, those are obviously the lessons that you take from that, and she brought them into the rematch excellently. And, like, without a question, if you're going to call that a fucking robbery and then not talk about Leslie Smith, it's like, I have no understanding. But we shall move on. Kieran Clark, pretty straightforward performance here, pretty straightforward win. And good. It's good to see that, to be honest. You know, obviously the excitement of Kieran falling behind and coming back is great kind of theatre for us to watch, but it's not great for Kieran himself. And he wanted to kind of improve on that. And he did improve on that, really, Andy, didn't he? Coming in there against Leonardo Sinis. What he did have to deal with was another late change of opponent, but he passed every kind of question or every exam with flying colours. And now it's time for a little bit more of a step up in competition, I feel, for Kieran Clark.
Yeah, Kieran Clark he's undefeated. He's 7-0 now. He can't keep fighting the same. It can't just be the same. Okay, Kieran Clark is fighting on the main card against a guy, and it's just kind of a replaceable opponent where we learned nothing from this fight than we did. Obviously we learned things about Kieran, but he's looking for that progression. He's not necessarily looking for a top 10. I don't think they should put him in with the top 10, but I think it needs to be a more, I don't know who it is. I don't have a name. There was talk.
I have a name, and I'm going to ask Quilty there after this.
Go ahead. Is it? You go on ahead.
It's a guy who fought at first on the card. I think that's a tough fight, and don't get me wrong.
That's class.
A tough fight. But let's be real here. Let's a 7-0 versus an 8-0. Let's fucking see. Let's see.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're talking about not wanting to see Kieran Clark against the same level of opponents. From what I've seen from Kassan, he is the guy. Like, that's going to be a really, really tough test for Kieran. And no doubt about it, he'd take that the minute he was offered it. And that's two fantastic up-and-coming prospects in the featherweight division in Bellator, two undefeated prospects, and it would be a phenomenal fight. How would you like to see that as well, Quilty?
You know what? On the night after Kieran won, I actually thought about it. I was thinking, geez, you know what? Would this be pretty good? But do Bellator really want to pit two really good prospects against each other this early? Now, it's something they would do, don't get me wrong. I think it'd be fantastic. Where you do it is another story. Do you do it in Ireland and wait all the way until September? Or do you allow them to have another fight in between? So let's say, like, I'd love to see Kieran Clark go stateside this year, like to be allowed, like have kind of that ability to compete abroad and not just in Paris or Milan or somewhere like that, but actually go to the States, compete at one of those cards, have that experience and not have the pressure of selling tickets constantly twice a year and having to wait between the two Irish cards. I really love to get that opportunity and then come back and maybe fight Kassan in Dublin. I think that would be kind of the ideal route, in my opinion, that I'd love to see anyway.
Yeah, I like that. I like that opinion, Andy.
I just wonder what would happen. So, like, I'm just thinking here, Kieran Clark is a huge ticket seller in Dublin. He brings hundreds and hundreds. So I wouldn't be shocked if Bellator said, no, I think September sounds pretty good for you there, Kieran. Like that sounds good for you. Like I just wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
No, I see your point.
Where they don't want to risk 400 tickets or whatever that's sold by Kieran for September. So, but
what we want and what we get, lads, they don't always they don't always meet up. But like we can offer our suggestions. Kieran wants it himself, and I mean,
and you know what?
Point do you
like
kind of
when we're talking about like the when we can look at tangible like things that can give us a sense of where he's at. He fought Rafael Hudson. Hudson gave him some serious problems. Now Kieran got the win in the end and he finished him, but Kassan Magomed-Sharipov went in and dusted Rafael Hudson. So MMA math, you're saying, okay, this is, he did a much better job in a cleaner fashion than Kieran did against Hudson. So this is a much, this is a step up in competition for Kieran Clark. So yeah, I mean, it definitely has that. So I mean,
step up in competition for Kassan as well. Let's be real.
It'd be a cracking fight.
It'd be a great fight. It'd be interesting. We shall move on. We need to keep rolling here, Dad. Sorry, Karen Moore against Magic Rosansky. Quilty. I think the only point I have about this is I don't think that Carl is going to get his flowers for the performance like that, or for a win like that, I should say. I think he had to go in there and fight the fight that he fought, because Magic is such a dangerous guy, quick hands, big power. Carl just went in there and just put on a good performance and won a unanimous decision against a really, really good guy. And you have to give him credit for that. Yes, it might not have looked great. Yes, it might not have been that entertaining. But my saying is it's better to fucking win ugly than not win at all. What are your thoughts on the fight and the performance, Quilty?
Yeah, wasn't the most exciting fights, or it was entertaining, but not most exciting, I guess, compared to his last performance. But they don't have to be. Like, you're in there to get paid and you're in there to progress your career. You're not in there to solely put on mad fights that put you in serious risk and put your opportunities in risk. So I felt like he put on an ideal performance to get him through that fight and get the win and advance his career to a next step. So they don't always have to be exciting. And I was delighted he got the win. It kind of lines up a fairly good maybe a good opportunity now of stepping up to maybe someone in the rankings, because, you know, as he deserves. Hopefully it's not a case that we wait until September, as we said with Kieran, and he gets another one sooner rather than later, maybe Paris or something.
100%. I'd like to see him against Grant Neal next. That would be my
Cracker.
pick for Carl Moore. I think that would be a great fight. We get to see maybe, you know, yeah, it's just a good fight. Andy, would you like to see him in something like that? I'm assuming too. We've got to be looking up the rankings rather than down the rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think after a performance like that, I think, you know, talks of Yoel Romero will probably wait a couple of fights. I think it was, as Carl Carl was disappointed with it himself, but ultimately he got the win. I think he posted something like, you know, champions always find a way to win, not my prettiest performance. And that's a fair assessment. It was a forgettable fight. I don't think anyone would be going to watch it back, but he got the win and he moves onwards. And as you said, we all knew coming into this, Maciej Wrzanski, unranked, but not really, not an unranked fighter, if that makes sense. And he wasn't going to get the flowers, the full flowers for this regardless. So Grant Neal sounds perfect. I think it's someone who's above him in the rankings. He's won his last 3 fights now in Bellator. He deserves it.
I can see Magic, even after that loss, if he stays with Bellator, I can see that guy being ranked in the next year or two anyway, with a couple of wins. Moving on, Charlie Ward, Mike Shipment. Shipman took home a unanimous decision. Kind of a similar-ish fight that we've seen against Fabian Edwards. And, you know, it's the takedown that gets Charlie. It wasn't the Fabian fight. It was again in this fight. Managed to get back up a couple of times as well. And look at it. It was an unfortunate loss for Charlie, and I think, you know, let's put him in there with a guy who's willing to stand and bang with him, and so we can watch a fun fight. Obviously, can't pick and choose your matchups too well. I think the Fabian Edwards fight kind of, you know, poured water on his maybe championship aspirations, and, you know, this would have been a good win that might have gotten back into the conversation if he had got it, but not really his night. But I'd like to see him back there again in September. Let's put him in there with a striker, and let's have some fun, Jack, as they say. But we shall move on. I'm going to keep rolling through these guys. Brian Moore versus Luca Iovine, a close split decision. I thought Brian did more than enough to get the nod, and deserved so as well. I think the biggest story was the story around his matchup. Because it wasn't his best performance, Andy. I think, and we've seen it time and time again, fighters sometimes fight to the level of their opponent. And I think Brian kind of did that. And he kind of alluded to that after the fight when he was speaking to you lads as well, that, you know, it wasn't his best performance, but he got the job done nonetheless, and he moves on, and he's called out Leandro Higo again. And it's like we're in fucking Groundhog Day here, guys, because it's every time he gets in there, he gets a win, he calls out Higo, and every time we're left wanting. Andy, this needs to happen, and it needs to happen now.
There's the only people to blame if this fight doesn't happen is Bellator MMA. Brian wants to fight. We put it out there afterwards. Higo openly saying, I want this fight. I've said before I want this fight. Let's do it. So now it's on Bellator. I asked Scott Coker, and he kind of sidestepped the question, as he has a very impressive way of doing with some questions, where he's like, we need to see it takes 2 sides and stuff. And I'm like, well, actually, you already have the 2 sides. Like, just make the fight. He said that he just needs a win here. And yeah, look, it wasn't, again, he was disappointed. You and I, Ian, hopped on we did like the 10-minute podcast on Severe, and we kind of were thinking he was going to go in and blow him out of the water. And, maybe this is a bit of the general after the battle. Maybe I definitely overlooked Luca Iovine more than I potentially should have, thinking, Nathaniel Wood went in here and blasted him. Brian Moore should do too, when, maybe that was the case, but Nathaniel Wood's also, one of the best fighters in the world. Not that Brian isn't, but not every fight is going to play out the exact same. Iovine is a very experienced competitor, and maybe I just overlooked him a bit. But I thought, yeah, look, not he didn't get to finish. I thought it was a clear victory for Brian. I didn't think should have been a split decision really. But a win is a win, and he keeps winning. And he's had 12 fights in Bellator now, 2 wins on the trot. It's time.
There you go.
Make the fight.
Higo. Shout out to his nickname for him too, Jose Aldi. Brilliant. I love that too. Quilcha, on to you. Richie Smullen, Peter Nizelski, up there for me and for one of the best performances of the night, because like Carl Moore, I think that a lot of people don't know Peter Nizelski. I think he has everyone knows he has a win over a ranked opponent, Pedro Carvalho, but Richie Smullen went in there and just got the job done in very impressive fashion in mine, because that was a real tough guy he was in there with.
Yeah, and it was so close. Like when it went to the scorecards, I was genuinely thinking, okay, this could go either way. But Richie's, I thought his boxing looked good. I haven't seen him in quite a while and watched the fights from when he was in Ukraine fighting. But yeah, his boxing looked improved. I think his opponent was, I have to forget his name now.
Peter
Piotr. Yeah, I can't say that second name, but he was landing some lovely body shots at one point, and he actually had Smullen, he had him in a guillotine at one point as well.
Yeah, they're about 25 guillotines.
Yeah, they're loving him. Yeah, Richie defended really well. I thought his grappling looked sensational, as it always does. Really, it was kind of it was a great performance from him and a massive win. Like, he could really launch himself into against a ranked opponent next.
Yeah, I don't see why not, really. I think there was Andy, there was a wave or an air of confidence around Richie, I think, after the fight as well, certainly after the win. And it definitely, Quilcha did mention the striking exchanges where he did look much more comfortable than we've ever seen before as well. But ticked off a lot of boxes there, did Richie?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest. I thought from Cage side that he had. I was surprised that he got the win, but then I saw a few kind of highlights and stuff looking back, and I think he landed a lot more damage than was kind of probably visible from Cage side. The confidence was definitely there after the fact, and I think he has his USVs as well, so he wants to fight, rapid. He wants to get in there and go again. He seems like he really wants to hit the ground running here. So throw him back in there in a few months, get him on a US card against a ranked opponent of some sort, literally anyone in the featherweight, maybe a Daniel Weichel or someone like that, and go from there.
100%. Yeah, I definitely agree with the decision, not being biased at all, obviously. He did just enough, but that was razor close. You could not argue if Peter got the nod in that as well.
Yeah, you just can't score fights from media row. It's impossible.
Impossible. A very, very good featherweight debut for Dara Kelly. Quilcha, he was massively impressive against Storvell Jordan. Lots of questions coming in here about if he was going to make the weight, how he would look at featherweight, but simply he looked fantastic at the weight, looked full of energy, and I'm very excited to see his progression in the 145-pound division. Are you?
Yeah, of course. I was curious to see how his gas tank would hold up with the extra 10-pound drop, because he looked massive at lightweight, never mind featherweight. Overall, the performance was clinical. He was fantastic. The grappling, the striking, absolutely mauled him. There's a reason he's called the Mobile Mauler, and he showed it in the night. He was fantastic.
Brilliant to see. Look, we're going to match him with similar enough opponents. We don't need to be moving Dara up too much. And it's the same, Andy, for Kenny as well. Kenny Mukahana, who came in and probably got the most dominant performance and the most dominant win out of all the fighters really on the night. Looked unbelievable again. I think with Kenny, he needs a little bit of a step up, but not too much of a step up. Let's get him a good building fight and see where we go. But he was mad impressive, wasn't he?
Yeah, I thought the elbow that he landed was ferocious. At first, I thought from Cage side, I thought it might have been an early stoppage, and then I saw the replay of it, and I was like, oh god, like you could see McIntosh's kind of eyes rolling back after he landed that first elbow. For me, it's less about the next opponent. Like, I think, gradual steps up or more experienced opponents. I'd like to see him a little bit higher on the card. I think they could have something here with Kenny from a personality perspective. I really wanted him to get another interview with John McCarthy. Obviously, they don't have time for that. It was a pity he had to go off and do CT scans. We didn't get to speak to him backstage either. But he's got a personality. He's a likable guy. Keep going with him. Get a slightly more experienced opponent. But maybe push him up a little bit higher on the card. Maybe reduce the number of fights. Of non-Irish fights on the card too.
100%. Assail as Hughes obviously got a great win over Liam McCracken. in his fight at 145 pounds. That was a great fight. I was looking forward to that. Two top prospects, and Asil got in there, got gritty, and kind of approached the fight in a different manner than really anyone was ever expecting. I expected him to kind of maybe try and stop the takedown, land these shots on the feet, and go from there and see where. But he chose to go on the grappling route and fought a tough, gritty fight. Deserved to get the win, in my opinion, but that's a good 15 minutes in the bank for him. That win against Liam McCracken is going to look a hell of a lot better in 2 years. It's going to look even more better in 5 years, and in 10 years time when we're looking back. Liam McCracken is one that we should be looking out for as well, a top prospect. And last but not least, Daniel Scottisi lost a unanimous decision over Dmitry Hanesenko. Very over and back fight. Look, unanimous decision. It was a lot closer than a unanimous decision in my book. I would argue that Scottisi could have been given rounds 1 and rounds 2, to be honest. I've heard a couple of people say that on Twitter, and I can't argue that. Now, I didn't watch the fight back with a fine-tooth comb, but I thought a 29-28 either way could have been fair. Hanesenko got the unanimous decision, and unfortunately Daniel dropped to 12-7 in his career. The length of the card, lads, was a little bit too long for me overall. I think, you take out 1 or 2 fights, you give these guys a little bit more time on the microphone to develop the narratives and develop the stories and to showcase their personalities as well. Catching that rawness straight after a fight. Even after you go back into the post-fight press conference, they'll have calmed down a little bit. Getting that rawness and that emotion out straight after a fight is always the key for me. So maybe you take away 1 or 2 fights and give these guys a little bit of opportunity on the mic for further events. But that's it. Bellator 291 in the books. I know we're all tired of severe MMA after the event. To do it another couple of times this year, guys. Cage Warriors, PFL, Bellator, all coming back to the Tree Arena. So we'll look forward to that nonetheless. But we'll move from the big event to the regional event, and we'll talk a bit of Iúr Fighting Championships. Iúr 6 went down the very next day after Bellator with Alexander Yankov and Dorian Kolenchyov. I'll butcher that name, in the main event. Yankov won by second round TKO. It was an impressive performance. I think the story of this fight was the little bit of break in between rounds 1 and rounds 2. A little bit of madness at the scene, Andy, hey?
Yeah, geez, it seemed mad. And look, first and foremost, I think that there was a fighter who was receiving some medical attention, and had to go to hospital. I believe that they're okay. The last I heard, which is the main thing there. So, ultimately, safety first and foremost there. But yeah, obviously, if you're a fighter in a cage who's kind of not involved in that, and you're ready to go, and all of a sudden, you can't, and there's a stoppage, you kind of get cold, and you're trying to stay warm, and I know Collie Mann was kind of going mad by the sounds of things, that from what the commentators were saying, like kind of saying like he can't perform or whatever. So it just seemed a bit chaotic in general. But
as Andrew McGahan excellently said, there was a couple of yups in the crowd. That's that's the kind of vibe I was getting watching it as well. But
geez, the finish from Yankov was lovely though. Like Paul Brown, just the master of commentary in Ireland these days, knowing exactly what's going on. He's saying, "Oh, he's framing here come the elbows," and elbows came pretty quick after that. He heard him with a shot to the body. It looked like in the end was the finishing blow, and it was a TKO from there. So a good performance from Alexander Yankov.
Yeah, it was good for him to come back in. Like there was a 5-minute break in between rounds there, and that's something that you can't get used to. You're fearful of cooling down again. I know they were putting back on their tops as well, but when they got back going, Yankov was the guy who got off and got the better start and got the finish in the end. It was a great win for him. We've seen Conor McCarthy, Quilty in the co-main event, taking on Conor Nolan. It was an amateur lightweight title. We had 5 3-minute rounds here, and it was basically all one-way traffic for Conor McCarthy here. Put on another excellent performance, like we mentioned with Peter Quilly in his corner too. Credit to Peter for stepping in and going up there to be in Conor's corner straight after his fight on Saturday night. Another impressive performance by Conor McCarthy, Quilty.
I only saw a round of it. My stream cut out, so I missed 4 rounds.
Oh no!
I was on to you guys. I was gutted. 5-round amateur fight in Ireland, first one, and yeah, I was heartbroken. So I've yet to watch it back. So you'll have to save me here, lads.
I'll jump in and save you here. Conor McCarthy looked fantastic, and this was 5 rounds, kind of replicating the UK model that seems to be at amateur for title fights now. He seemed to grow and grow and grow as the fight went on. His body shots, his combinations, he was just landing all. Conor Nolan, massive hats off to him for staying with McCarthy for the 5 rounds, but he was just a further step behind as the fight went on. McCarthy picked him apart, and really he looks like one of the most promising amateurs in the country right now. A very impressive performance from the SBG Nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with the pace that Conor was able to set throughout this as well, because, these 3 5-minute rounds, the 2 extra rounds would have been new to him as well. It didn't look like it affected him one bit. He was growing into the fight. He was landing his shots. He was moving forward. And to me, he just dictated exactly where he wanted the fight to go. And that kind of played out. All the rounds were pretty similar as well. Like you said, Conor Nolan did an excellent job to keep it competitive. Showed some great heart. He'll be back as well, as will Conor McCarthy. The Battle of the Georgies was next for the amateur bantamweight title, with Georgi Grozev winning by unanimous decision, 3:30-26 cards from the judges. And Andy, that tells its own story about this fight. It was a pretty dominant performance from Grozev.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Grozev. Like I saw him live in his last fight against was it Flo Fares on it was Cage Legacy or Air. I think it was Cage Legacy. I can't remember the same weekend. And he was down in that fight, and he came back and he found a way to win. And this fight, he would just I think he's only been fighting something like 2 years or something, a very small amount of time. He looks like he's coming on at a rapid pace. And he was just completely dominant here. His grappling was fantastic. The pressure, the pace that he put on. And yeah, he put on just a very, very impressive performance, and he continues to surge and grow under Paddy Houlihan in Houlihan Martial Arts. And yeah, definitely one to watch for me.
Yep, big time. Moving on to the featherweight division, amateur Brendan Brannigan was defeated by Vladimir Stanka from Phantom MMA by split decision. Really close fight. Can't argue too much with the cards. Chris Fields was getting very animated in between rounds with Brannigan, trying to get him going, trying to get him back into the fight. But unfortunately, he just fell short on the judges' scorecard there. The Battle of the Burns was a great fight, really. Mikey Byrne won the fight by submission by guillotine choke, but the first round, Andy, was a super close fight. You got to see this, Quilcha, did you?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Money.
No, you go.
Yeah, no, I got to see this one. I was actually really looking forward to it. It was quick, but Mikey Byrne, I actually haven't seen. I can't even remember the last time I saw him, but wow, he really surprised me in that one. Thought he looked really good. That choke was deep. I think we heard on commentary that Byrne was, he was out by that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, choked out.
Yeah,
I think he had to get oxygen as well. It was kind of a bit of a scary situation at first there, but I was chatting to Andy Ryan after, and he's okay, which is good. Obviously these things happen.
Yeah, 100%. Michael Cartmill. No, sorry, I did skip a few fights here. Sorry, my document was all over the place. We need to talk about Dino
middleweight.
Driscoll.
Yeah.
Dino Driscoll and Sinead Coakley. I mean, I don't know what we can say about Sinead Coakley. The
best walkout tune in the game.
Best walkout tune in the game, all right. That's for sure.
And the Auld Triangle.
But
remix Del Chapo.
He put in an unbelievable performance against Dino Driscoll. And you know what? Given his striking credentials, they went out the window here, because he chose to grapple, and he did excellently so and dominated each and every round here. I know you were very high on Senen. You were very high on him after you spoke with him at Iúr FC. He's definitely one to look out coming from with Team Rhino right now. The kid looks like he's absolutely savagely well rounded already. Obviously his brother Craig, and he's known for his Muay Thai credentials. I mean, the world is at Senna and Coakley's feet right now. I'm very curious to see how he gets on. That he made a tough fight look easy there against Dino Driscoll, in my opinion.
I just thought he fought incredibly intelligently, and I imagined it was the game plan. I think Paul Brown was talking on the commentary they were going to chop down the lead leg, and that they had a lot of respect for Dino Driscoll. We saw Dino Driscoll only a few weeks ago. I think it was Premier FC, and he looked very impressive. He looked like a very slick striker. We know that Senan Coakley has that in his back pocket too, but to go in here, and when you've come up and grown up in a Muay Thai gym, it's very promising to see someone who's developing the rest of their game, because it was his grappling here, it was his wrestling, it was his jiu-jitsu that really won him the fight. And I think to be able to, to not just, it's very easy for a fighter when they're a striker and you're fighting a striker to go in and fight with a bit of ego and say, right, like, I'm going to show you who's going to be the better on the feet here. He didn't bother. And he just decided, fuck this, I'm just going to take it down and win, where I believe I am far superior, and it was a comprehensive victory in the end. I scored every round for him, and yeah, very impressed. Still very, very young in his career, very young in age-wise too, but he's showing a lot of promise at the moment, and it's great to see.
Absolutely, it is great to see. I think Senan Coakley has a huge future ahead of him. Michael Cartman and Aaron Boyle fought to unanimous decision, with Michael Cartman winning 30-27 on all three judges' scorecards. Moving on from that, again, Alex Josan from Full Power Gym took on Corey McLaughlin from Fight Academy Ireland. McLaughlin came back and won via second round submission. We'll talk to Liam a little bit about that in just a few moments. I think, Corey McLaughlin looked brilliant in that fight. We'd have to scoot through these a little bit quickly. We're getting tight for time here, lads.
One we have to mention, though, is Aaron Henry versus Shea Cleland.
Yeah.
What a scrap.
Unreal. Two lads went at it. Absolutely fantastic, I must admit. And hats off to both of them. I know it was a finish for Shea in the end. I actually thought Aaron was having the better of the two at one point, and it was back and forth chaos, and that's why.
Yeah, Aaron started real strong, but Shea came back. That was a great fight.
Fantastic. Hats off to two of them. Two young lads are on the way up.
Brilliant. Another guy I'd like to kind of mention as well is that of Roman David, who took on Mantavilis Voisilius. I think he won a unanimous decision. It was 30-26 on one of the judges' scorecards. We've seen David in there against Conor McCarthy previously and gave him a good fight too. But I really like his style, really slick striking, and definitely somebody to look out for coming out with Team KF as well. Anybody else stand out, guys, before we move on? Obviously, a couple of great performances as well on the undercard. Anything else stand out before we move on to the interview with Liam Shannon?
I'll probably put you on the spot here, because I don't think I even saw this one, but I see it in the notes here. There was a body kick KO here by Thomas McVeigh in one of the first fights in the card, but looks things, so you don't often see body kick KO. Fair play on that.
No, it was and it was a body kick KO that was accumulated off of a couple of other body shots as well. Throughout the fight, McVeigh was landing those big impactful shots.
There's something about a body shot KO that's just like
it's real clean. To go back to even Yaroslav Amosov, I thought his use of the body kick against Logan Storley was unreal, and that's
like a baseball bat.
It's crazy, yeah. And look at that; that was a pretty vicious finish to get us going at the start of the night too. So shout out to Thomas McVeigh from New Era Gym as well. That brings us right up to our interview with FAI head coach Liam Shannon. Fantastic interview. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to send it over to Andy to get us kicked off for that.
And now we are delighted to be joined by the head coach at Fight Academy Ireland, home to not one, not two, but three Cage Warriors champions in Paul Hughes, Joe McColgan and Rhys McKee. Liam Shannon, thank you very much for joining the show today. How are you?
All good. Thank you very much. My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you've had a busy day today. You're just home from Iúr Fighting Championship 6. Corey McLaughlin got a lovely win there on the show. How are you happy with that performance?
Yes, Corey's recently joined about 6 months. A lot of improvements in him. Ironed out a few faults and a few areas that we needed addressing. Just getting back in there with a good level opponent, good test for himself. And just the way he's progressed and he's showing up tonight. There's a lot more to come from Corey, so very, very impressive. And it's always good that he puts the work in, that somebody gets the reward as well for all the hard work he does.
Yeah, I'm trying to, geez, there were so many fights there tonight. I was trying to remember. It was a guillotine choke, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, Gil, it was actually something that was being covered in classes the last few weeks by Pat. It was a gig because he was looking around at Pat and he was doing it slightly wrong. And we were hoping he's about to give up on it. And he looked around at Pat in the corner and Pat was saying, no, you need to, because he got the height, you need to crunch into the side you've got the hair because he's got the height, and he tapped him out. So it was a good guillotine choke, yeah.
Yeah, the lads on commentary, Andrew McGann and Paul Brown, were saying that Pat was kind of in their ear telling him what he was doing wrong with it there.
It's literally what we've been doing the last few weeks up in Pat's Monday night class. It's just the arm and guillotine from the exact same scenario, and whereas we went over it 100 times in training. So it's good to see, obviously, when you do in practice, it comes out in the real time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've heard Reece McKee talking about Corey McLaughlin a lot. You know, what is he kind of one of the ones to watch of the amateurs coming up through the gym?
Like Corey, years ago, we had to be like an inter-club show in the gym, and he stepped up. He had no grappling whatsoever, just a striker, boxing mainly, and he just always had that like kind of, his guys, he's a killer. Like, I mean, his mentality's there to hurt people, and just that kind of ruthlessness that you got. But like then he kind of started, I would say, next gen, and he just wants to fight all the time. But sometimes that's your own downfall, because your skill level, as your fights go on, your skill level needs to go up in all areas. And I think he had a wee bit of mixed results. Obviously, he's done a lot of training with us, but he decided then for it's best for himself to go up and join us full time, and maybe address all the issues that he wasn't covering or he feels he needed covered, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk to you about the rest of your fighters in the gym, about Fight Academy Ireland, about Cage. There's a lot we can talk to you about today, but you're also you're a man of many talents, and you're a promoter as well with Cage Conflict. Cage Conflict have been putting on some great shows, I feel, the last while in Irish MMA, both amateur and pro. What was the reasoning, I suppose, behind creating that promotion to begin with?
Well, probably the number one reason, to be perfectly honest, was that for opportunities for our guys. I didn't feel that the shows we had at the time were often enough. The only one really we had was Akuma. We don't deal with clan wars at all, because many of our fighters, because previously we were treated, and it was all basically about money, to be honest, perfectly honest. Like, it was all about money. I had a guy, I was sick, we had to pull out a fight, and he wasn't giving any of his ticket money back until I obviously had to make sure he got it back. You know what I mean? It was, I think people get in this for the wrong reasoning, not for the sport. And I didn't like certain elements which were going down that road, but unfortunately we had no other promotions that were active. Akuma, the time battle zone was coming and going, and then obviously all the stuff down the south, the new rule sets, the MRIs and all that stuff to make it ultra safe, kind of killed the amateur game as such, because it's such a high cost and young guys coming through. And even this day, it's overcautious. You look at amateur boxing, they don't need the same rules or the same safety protocols to follow. They compete, and I think sometimes it does kill an awful lot of opportunities for guys who haven't got the money, basically.
Yeah, geez, no, that's fair enough. I mean, it seems like it's quite difficult these days, especially with all the insurance costs, to put on these shows. Like, so it seems that more and more kind of coaches are kind of having to just kind of be like, right, well, I guess I'll just put one on myself. Yeah,
well, the thing is obviously up here, but we still need to cover the safety, the fighter safety's element, no matter what. We need to address that and cover them issues, but also with not at the same time to kill the sport. So a happy medium. The people obviously have their bloods and their medicals and their eye tests and all, but until they can afford it in terms of they're getting paid, why should they be out £500 every year for a brain scan if every other thing's okay and it's an amateur game with bigger gloves and a different rule set? I mean, you can't get kneed to the head, you can't get elbowed, a lot of stuff. I mean, it's just that I feel down the south is because of the situation years ago, it's hard, because they dealt with a real terrible situation years ago with Charlie Ward and the Portuguese guy. Unfortunately, passed away after our fight, and it was almost probably forced upon them. But up here, I think now you can take a breather and look out at the sport in general. You need to just have that happy medium. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like it sounds like you're saying that you want the safety aspect of it and ensuring that all the fighters are safe, but it just seems to be too expensive in the Republic of Ireland to administer
Yeah.
these tests, etc.
We 18, 19-year-old leaving school needs to get blood tests, needs to get what I call this normal medical, then he has to get an eye test, and then he has to go and get an MRI, and then you have to register with a database, and then there's late penalties if you're not registered in time within a week or two from the show. And like, well, this is after really so much financial burden on people. With like, I don't know how anyone, unless you've got good family or come from maybe people who support you an awful lot, they hardly can afford it, because an awful lot of our guys wouldn't be able to compete down the south.
What's the difference between the commission that you're using now and Safe MMA? So is it just a cost basis, or
well, we obviously, what we always did anyway, up here anyway, was you do your blood, your medicals, and your eye test. With the commission that we had, it's been working hard, me, Gareth, and Paddy on this. It's just to regulate it and have a database. So rather than someone just give you their word and then say, oh, I forgot this, I forgot to email you the bloods, or I'll send it to you, or just everything kind of gets wrapped up. This is going to be exact same as CFMA in terms of a database. So me as a promoter, so good, I can go on and go what featherweights are medically cleared to fight within 3 to 4 weeks. You know what I mean? What they'll need, or what they haven't got, or have they got it all. And then also, like, I've had this, our guys, actually people who have got their medicals and they're well in date, but because of the data protection, they can't, the people who do it can't hold on to the information, so they have to erase their emails. So I had 5 or 6 guys during the last week have to redo it all, because we'll be redoing it all on Tuesday. I have 27 guys and girls doing their medicals and referrals for MRIs in the gym on Tuesday through Paddy and Gareth, because a lot of them are in date, but they've misplaced their emails or their printed documents, so it's null and void because there's no evidence.
Is that with Safe MMA you're saying that they're to do it again, or
no, that's for this new commission. I'm doing it because this is like we Damien McGuigan, for example, the other day, just because he was talking about it, he got his bloods and medicals all done in July last year to fight on the show, and he logged out of his email address or something. They had to start a new email address. He couldn't access his old emails, and I went, well, tough nuggets, you can't access it. How do I know? Even though I know you have it, but we need proof. So it's like almost a line in the sand, and we're starting from scratch. And this way that the database will be updating itself, because you only upload your documents and then they have it permanently.
And just to back up, to take a step back for a second, just for anyone listening who doesn't know what we're talking about. So, like, I think this is brilliant news that Cage Conflict announced that you're partnering up with the Combat Sports Safety Commission Northern Ireland, and I believe I've just seen that Iúr Fighting Championships are actually going to partner up with them as well. So obviously, I was vocal about the John Redmond fight not too long ago, and then additionally there was the incident on the show with Troy Gibson where he sustained a lot of unnecessary damage that was just kind of a very scary situation that he was put in. What was the reason? Were those kind of the reasons why that this was looked at? But I think it's a great step forward for safety for fighters in Northern Ireland across the board.
Well, for regarding the John Redmond, Ken McClurkin fight, obviously Cale's opponent was at the airport in Italy and then refused to get on the plane. So that started the medal was messaging me and not getting my coach says he's got COVID, he's not coming. And I says, just get on the plane, I'll fly another coach in tomorrow. And but that started it, so it was like almost like 72 hours of what are we going to do here. So obviously we were looking at people who in Ireland first of all, and then John Redmond came up. Now I hadn't seen the fight, but the first thing we did was Pat asked John what way did it go and are you suspended? And he says, I was absolutely banjaxed, I was tired, I didn't take it, and I was in a fight, I took hits, but I wasn't like knocked out, I wasn't stopped. And then Pat says, were you given anything saying you're medically suspended? And he says, no, I was just exhausted. I was just stuck in a position, I was just couldn't move, and the referee stopped it. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't given anything saying I can't fight. So that's what we took. That's what we took from it. And this is how the whole combat commission started up, because I actually asked the doctors on the day who pulled the fight what was the reason behind it, and then I asked them had they seen the fight, and they says no. And I went, so we were taking somebody's word for it. And what part of I know it's there's a TKO, but if somebody's tired and exhausted, it doesn't mean they've took any real damage or can't fight previously or going forward within a certain time scale. So we were kind of stuck in limbo, and we thought obviously ultimately the right decision to pull the fight. But at such a late stage, people weren't doing their background checks. The medical association who they were associated with, they weren't giving out medical suspensions in terms of how do you know if you're, how do you define a TKO if the fighter says, I'm okay, I was just tired. Yeah, the referee jumps in and stops it, but they literally go to work the next morning and nothing the matter with me. You know what I mean? So I've had guys totally exhausted. I remember years ago, Ken McClurkin was fighting in Akuma, and he beat the complete crap out of the guy for 2 rounds. Could not even go out for the 3rd round. And I've known once and only ever time I threw the towel in because he was so exhausted. And he never took a strike. He just had tiredness. So how could that go down as a TKO? Somebody has to go in and actually dissect and say, yes, he shouldn't be fighting, or yes, he should. And then it's on the medical team on the night to literally hand them a sheet and go, you cannot fight within a certain time scale. You know what I mean? And then everybody can have access to that.
Yeah, like I think where that fell into was a real grey area in the sport in Ireland, where
exactly.
You know, he was down as he was listed in the Safe MMA database as being medically suspended till something like, I don't know, a month after the cage conflict event. But that's not all in, you know, he's on that database, but like that doesn't. Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's no regulation for the sport in the country of true regulation. So it's kind of like, well, everyone has to be. Yeah, it's just, as you said, a breakdown of communication, and then it's like, well, if you're not working off that database, then how do you guys know? And yeah, it probably comes up when it just blows up like that the way it did. But look, ultimately the right decision was made in the end, and yeah, safety was put first.
And ultimately, like also too, on what I done was I pulled our medical staff. We had a meeting afterwards, me, Paddy, Gareth, and Danny Core, and we sat down and we had a talk. And I went, well, you're talking about Troy Gibson. And I went, did I give Troy Gibson a sheet saying he can't fight for 31 days, or he shouldn't spar, or he shouldn't compete? And they says no. And I went, there is in life the fucking problem.
Yeah, because it's coming down to the likes of you and the lads there who are having to make those judgment calls yourself. And exactly. I think that's pretty unfair situation that you find yourselves in as well. Like, you know what I mean?
And I found that situation out as I entered the show that day, that fight was going to get pulled. And I went, have you even went there taking somebody else's word and somebody else's opinion? And it could have turned really sour, because as a kid was a big ticket seller. So if it would have happened at a later time when his crowd arrived and got a few drinks, it could have been obviously what I call turned in a nasty situation, like, you know what I mean, because of, just as you say, a grey area and nobody making them ultimately important calls.
Yeah, and then, you know, sorry, go ahead. Do you have a question there, Quilty?
No, work with it.
No, I was just going to say, so then, so ultimately, how did the combat, is it yourself that's behind the commission? Is it was Decky Larkin, is he involved, I think?
No, there's a few things going on obviously behind the scenes, namely from the last show, but in general from the MMA in the country, especially in the north. Obviously, with John and Danny announced the other week where the Sports Council and I have accepted it as a sport. Like, I'm working very hard, and Danny's always worked very hard behind the scenes to get it recognised, but always keep, like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in our way, a lot of fences. Like, me and Pat called all the coaches in Northern Ireland together, going on 4 years ago now, just before Christmas. We said, lads, we need to get this all together, and very few were able to step up or wanted to step up and put their own heads on the line. And then it kind of fizzled out a wee bit. Then cage conflict started, and it's brought it back, the sport back a wee bit in the north, because I think it was fizzling out. The shows weren't really often enough or weren't high profile enough. Now again, you had like the big shows coming in, like some Brave or Bomb or a few other things, but never far and few between. So as the sport grew and the talent and obviously the recognition, then also you got to cover your areas, your financial areas, your safety areas, all that stuff, because if we're getting judged against something like boxing now, we need to be absolutely squeaky clean. Like I have a guy up in the club was fighting, you know what I mean, in the All Irelands last week, and he couldn't compete because his own boxing club lost his medical card. It's a handwritten medical card, like it's going back to the dark ages. Like MMA is so well regulated, compared to other sports, we get more recognition, and it's laughable when I heard that he couldn't compete because his own club lost his medical card.
You mentioned about, I guess you spoke with Danny Core there a minute ago, and you also mentioned about how the sport's so regulated, and I guess the progress that's being done up north for recognition at the moment is a bit of a topic. I kind of wanted your thoughts on it as well, and what you think about what's happening there.
Yeah, well, we've been in with the Sports Council. We've had them out several times to the gym. We've had the mayor of Belfast out. We've had the local MPs out. We've had community representatives out. To see what we do. I've always said, like, our club's more than just a club. Like, it offers an awful lot of opportunities for employment. Where we are is socially depraved. It's such a great area, and the kids and even a lot of the fighters who have had bad backgrounds and they could have went different roads. It's so good. The sport in general is such a great thing for people to get into. It should be recognised, but until years ago, go back 10 years when I started trying to get it regulated and trying to get like some kind of help in terms of financial help, I mean grants or rates relief or anything at all, it just was hitting a wall all the time. And slowly but surely, as the UFC in general grew, the public perception of the sport grew, that people, my own father, I remember like winning an Irish title years ago, my own father laughing at it, going, it's not a sport, that's barbaric. You know what I mean? He always refused to watch me because he didn't class it as a sport. That was just obviously the older generation. We need to start fresh and the new generation. And but to do that, then we have an awful lot of dinosaurs who are going to fight against us. Danny's worked hard to change the perception of it within the council and showing that we have everything in place and it can be safe and it is good for the community and it doesn't like represent thuggery and thugs and like, you know what I mean? And that's what we have to do. And it'll be a long time before we do change everybody's concept of the sport. And but it's not just a sport; it's what also brings. You know what I mean? It brings to the communities. It's so good and so important. And up to this point, no club in Northern Ireland has any financial help. And we're not asking for handouts, but we just like to get a wee bit of help. You know what I mean? Because we see how far the sport could grow with a wee bit of help.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a great step in the right direction. Like I was chatting to Danny Core recently enough, and those were the kind of things that he was highlighting, that, you know, the fact that you could go to the Antrim Sports Council or even, you know, local councils and apply for those grants that right now MMA cannot do because they're not recognised by a sport under Sport Northern Ireland. Obviously, it's IMMAA that are applying for that at the moment, and Fight Academy Ireland aren't in that. Like, it sounds like you're definitely supportive of getting it regulated in Ireland and in Northern Ireland, but like, what's your kind of how do you kind of view it when it's IMMAA that are doing it while
no, we're not against IMMAF at all in the slightest. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, we're just different agendas. The main reason being why IMMAF we haven't got anyone in IMMAF is because it's too hard to get to. Like, there was tryouts in we had kids can't forget in the Davnish in December, not there December before. The tryouts were in Cork the very next morning. And if you didn't attend them tryouts, you weren't getting on the team. So like, it was very hard for us to get anyone down there. And then obviously me and Andy have had lots of discussions. He was always very positive about getting us, because obviously the level of guys we have would bring the Irish team, I feel, up to our level. But there was so much financial work, or we had to register as a club with them, and then all the individuals had to register, and then what opportunities that if you didn't get the X, Y, and Z training sessions, then you're out of the loop. So all that financial stuff was pushed aside because you couldn't attend. And I felt that it was because it was all more based down the south, that them opportunities weren't happening up here. So we're trying to progress our guys' careers in a different way, which is like what Chris would do. Chris Fields, more get your amateur fights and try and get you on as a pro and move on into the pro game, because that's where you get paid ultimately. I mean, you don't get paid for amateurs, and it's very very costly if you hang about too much, especially down the south. I was talking to Keith Keogh about an hour ago, and I says, like, you need to get out of that amateur game and get making money and getting your career going. At what point, like, do you start making a career out of it? When you're 28 and you've won 3 goals, it doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah, there seems to be really conflicting views at the moment, and like, you know, everyone kind of has their own opinion from a coaching perspective on what the right approach is to making that jump from amateur to pro. And you know, we've talked to Chris, and Chris is kind of the view, and I hope I'm getting this right now, where you know, you get a few. It's more about your level. It's not about the number of fights you have on. Whereas it seems that the other way of thinking is kind of the IMMAF approach of getting as many fights in as possible, getting as much experience as you can, and then eventually, you know, kind of 2, 3, 4 years at that point going pro. It sounds like you're saying it's you think it's the quicker route to pro is the right one, you know, under the right circumstances.
Yeah, well, I think it's all about like kind of a balance. You know what I mean? I think the IMMAFs should be for, say, teens in the late teens, maybe the latest early 20s. When you're starting to hit 19, 20, you should be looking to fight proper amateur and getting the right fights in the more pressure scenarios, like properly hard to cut weight properly and that type of stuff and all. Preparing you properly for the professional game. I think the IMMAFs is like almost like kind of not a step to the side, but I think it's all about your age. It's all about your age. You know what I mean? Like if you look at like Alexander Sullivan, you know what I mean? He's had that many amateur games. It was hard to get him a professional game. And I was talking to him as well. So it's good to see that, keep that momentum going and be active, because you're playing a wee bit of catch up. I mean, he should have turned pro maybe 3 years ago too. He was as good a level as any pro there was. And the end of the day, ultimately, you want him to see in like, so whatever promotion it may be, winning titles and earning money and opening the bigger doors into the UFCs or Braves or Bellators or wherever it may be.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Just on a counterpoint to that, I guess, is, you know, I know you mentioned I was just back from the Worlds there, and I know what you mean in terms of, I see your point in terms of the having, you know, people may hang around too long on that, but I just want to hear what you think about when guys go over there and let's say we'll go for 1 or 2 tournaments, but get the looks in against people from all around the world. What do you think the benefit of that is compared to people who just competing at home and don't get to experience lads from, let's say, the USA, Dagestan, and all over, really?
Well, I think, as you say, you're naming countries that are heavy wrestling based, you know what I mean? And that's what you're talking about. If you look at people who are successful in these games, like it's a 3-minute round. It's basically really complete opposite of why the rules are changing now. Like you're talking about it, like it's heavy wrestling based. It's all about control, minimal damage, fighting 5 times a week, not getting, you know what I mean, in a bit of a scrap. Now, if you look at the rules, unified rules, me and Pop were talking the whole way up the car about it. It's the complete opposite of that. So a lot of them guys in the IMMAFs, whether win gold or not, when they turn even pro, that all that stuff is going to be null and void. Holding someone against the cage or being in guard or in half guard without any damage is not going to score no more. It doesn't score at all. Like, you know what I mean? I've been in the wrong end of some decisions, and Pat printed the rules out and looked at them, and we are drilling in there, guys. Lads, it's damage. You gotta be damage all the time. You know what I mean? Red IMMAFs is all about just like, it's almost like a control element, because you're fighting so often you can't afford to get hit.
Yeah, no, completely.
Fair enough. You're naming a country. You name me one good Dagestani fighter who's a good striker, or a American guy who he can hit. No, very few between them IMMAFs. I guarantee you, all of you took all the gold medalists, the majority of them are going out there and they're wrestling.
Yeah, no, some be very heavy wrestling style and they get the balance in. But I guess I've seen the likes of, if I give an example, Murad Ibrahimov, he was striking for quite a bit. Rasul Magomedov was practicing his striking for a lot of it, even though he's a high level wrestler, and mixed in the two. I do see your point, but there can be a lot of people who go in and wrestle, but I do think there is a balance as well. But no, I completely see that.
Yeah, but the people you were saying to me in particular were Dagestanis and Americans, which is key in the world wrestling. They weren't going like, what about the Swedish team or whatever? Because I mean, that's the guys who have more success in the IMMAFs are people who can not get hit, can control rounds, and can fight 5 times a week.
Fair.
Yeah, it seems like it's a balance of everything. Is really kind of what you're saying there, which is
Yeah.
it applies to so much, and it's, you're talking about Alexander O'Sullivan there, and it's great to see like he's now gone and signed with Cage, whereas somebody who had a very extensive amateur background, and then he fought on Cage Conflict in his pro debut, and now he's moved on. Cage Conflict, there's been some great matchups on Cage Conflict. I thought the which is the one now with the flyweight one, Ger Harris versus Kieran Mulholland, one of the best matchups I've seen in Ireland in recent years at the pro level. We have been critical of some of the other matchmaking, but we don't have the. You mentioned there, like, it's difficult to get these guys matchups in Ireland, and that what you're trying to do is kind of give them that experience to then push them on to the other shows. I want to hear your perspective on how you approach the matchmaking and the difficulties, because I'm sure it's easy for us to kind of, when we see fighter A versus fighter B, give our thoughts, and we're just giving an honest opinion, but sometimes it's critical. Sometimes, most of the time, I'd like to think it's positive, but sometimes it's negative. But we don't have your perspective on it, obviously. So I'd like to hear kind of your take on it all and how you approach it.
Well, 100%. Like, it is hard as a matchmaker to balance it out. You know what I mean? Obviously, we don't want to, because in the day we're trying to please the public too. Like, the people we're putting bums on seats, so we're selling Wolf tickets. Then the show soon fizzle out because they go, that's a load of absolute crap. We're turning up for our mate to beat someone up, and so eventually you'll lose your promotion because you're not putting on exciting fights. So I have to look at that too. As much as I obviously want my guys to win or whatever else, I got to look also. This has to be a competitive event, or else sooner or later the people will vote with their feet and go, I'm not going there. That's a load of crap. The way boxing is, you know what I mean? Like, I talked to Paddy McCrory last week, and I was about that in particular, and he was going, I'm not going, even though I want to see one of my boxing mates fight. He's fighting a guy who's 11 and 285. You know what I mean? So that's what, if you're a promoter, it's going to ultimately come to. You're going to lose your customers because they'll know it's not a good night of fight. So it has to be that element of competitiveness in it. You know what I mean? We try our best. Like, a lot of times too, like, we do our research. Like, we try and get guys from other countries because we're trying to actually help our guys and avoid the Irish versus Irish as much as we can, you know what I mean? Which comes with its own cost. You're flying people and you're putting them up, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And what I call them, like, sometimes that, yes, I understand what you're saying, that, like, oh, well, he's mismatched, but sometimes we don't really know. Like, a guy fought Ben Davis years ago. I think he was 4-1, Andre Mazzaro, and he came over and he was all up for it. And then Ben absolutely annihilated him. In 40, 50 seconds. Now, on the outside, people go, that was a total mismatch. He's 4-1. Since then, he's went on and fought in Centurion and a couple of our shows and won again. So you go, like, well, was that just a good performance from Ben? Or were you looking for an angle that was a mismatch? You know what I mean? Well, it wasn't. When I look at it, maybe afterwards go, Ben was a bit too much for him. But on paper, when I'm trying to make these matchups, you don't know until, you know what I mean, it's happening. Like, you know what I mean? Whenever Taga fought, like, he was getting it hard for a round. Your man had his back for like 3.5, 4 minutes. You know what I mean? Sometimes you don't know these unknown quantities. You see, like, kind of the videos, and you do research, and obviously they do coaches. They talk to their coaches, and they're all up for it. Like, they're not traveling halfway around the world to take a pasting. Like, I can have people come off from England every other week and do it. But like, there's a lot of other promotions who I feel that you don't give stick to. That you should be giving stick to because of the mismatches, and it's very apparent. You know what I mean? Like, there's something, like, you look at the photos, you go, like, Photoshop. You know what I mean? And I go, I'm trying my best here to help and get a promotion, and I don't feel like the Cage Conflict does get a fair crack of it. No, definitely not.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, and I think, like, I completely respect that perspective. I do think we
You know
are.
what I'm talking about. You know, Andy, who I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, but I do think.
I see under the same Twitter when you're putting going, that was a mismatch and blah blah blah. You're going on and going back to layers and going, oh, good luck and best of luck, and you know what I mean. You're going, no, you're not pulling this up in the dressing this. Is this not wrong? If this was Cage Conflict, would you not address this?
Yeah, no, but I think from a perspective, like, we've called out the fights on Centurion FC, where you've got some SPG fighters over there where, like, they look like mismatches. We've talked about when Dylan Tuke was matched up against Nikola Ivanovic on Cage Legacy. I feel like we try to be as fair as possible. I know maybe it doesn't feel that way, but yeah, maybe that's something that
Well, I didn't see your tweet. I didn't see anything about Centurion. Like, to be honest, and maybe you have. I don't know. But
no, we definitely have. Like Liam, no, not to try and get over and back now, but we try our best to do and be critical and say it as it is. And at the end of the day, we were only trying to get a look inside your mind when you're doing it. You're actually taking the first look at it. You have a lot of mouths to feed. So you know what I mean, and that's what it's all about.
But exactly, but I wouldn't be feeding them mouths unless I done my as best as I possibly can get our guys matched and all the Irish guys as a fair matchup as possible without them being overmatched, without it being the opposite way overmatched. Sometimes it does work out that way, and you go, Jesus, right? He'll not be on the card again. I didn't realize that he was at that level. I thought he was better, or his record suggests differently, or I mean, but I have guys who are like who've got negative records who are absolute monsters. You know what I mean? I have guys who have the opposite way, or who've got great records and great reputations, who I think they need a wee bit of work. They're not at that level yet. They're being protected too much, and I'm trying to rebuild them back up. You know what I mean? We're talking about Corey and I. He was getting the fights a bit too fast for his own talent to come up, so we had to slow the process down. Because I had him fighting before Christmas. I went, no, you're not ready yet. You know what I mean? So we're lucky we have that like kind of internal knowledge. But sometimes when you're bringing guys in from other countries, you don't know what you're going off in terms of who they're fought or who they're. You know what I mean? Like that when Jared Burns fought Nordine Hazrat, like Nordine's an absolute monster. He is here to win.
Yeah, that was a great matchup.
Like, you know what I mean? If you look at Nordine, like we're talking about Jared Harris, when Jared pulled out of the show in FCR, I think it was FCR, Nordine took the fight. Right, a week's notice, and the guy from Sweden pulled out him because he didn't want to fight him.
Yes. I think that was a great matchup that was put on. I think
it was never given the recognition that Nordine is a legit guy. He fought the guy who's a Cage Warriors champion at the minute, a bantamweight. No, he's an absolute monster, but he didn't get because his record doesn't. He's not 6-0. You know what I mean? Doesn't suggest, and because Jared put such an accomplished performance on that he didn't get the recognition earlier. You know what I mean? Where like there's like Alexander Yankov, like I don't know how his fight went. I will left before the last fight, but like his record,
second round TKO.
No doubt, like he's an absolute beast. Like, you know what I mean? He's 1-3, but if I put him on this, you're keeping it. No, it's an absolute barn burner. All the fights a year, razor close decision. Me and I, back and forward about how would you score it and what way was it, and you know what I mean. But his record looking out he's 1-3. He's not a 1-3 fighter, like
100%.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, and there's a difference between like certain fighters who have a certain record and other fighters. Like when you watch it, there is a difference. And I think like what we want, I know, is we want all the promotions in Ireland to be successful, and we just try to call it as we see it. And maybe it's sometimes we may talk about something on here and highlight it, but then it's not on it's not a tweet on social media, so maybe that kind of gets taken and pushed out. But
always feel free. Andy Stevenson, though, we'll be full permission to do that, Liam.
I'm always pissing someone off.
I love criticism and whatever else. Just all I ever ask for is like an honest and fair view.
100%.
Because
no, I was just gonna 100%. And like you made a point there about like you'll be judged on if whatever way people are viewing cage conflict, whether they want to come and watch. And like I think this last Bellator event is an exact example of that, where you've got fights where you don't really know the meaning of it, and it's kind of you're like there's just matchmaking that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And I think like so on every level it's kind of like that. And the same way when it's just say one gym on a card and there's no there's no Team KF, there's no FAI, there's no other fighters. It's kind of like it's just not as exciting. Whereas like you have, I think of fights like Paul Redmond and Norman Park. I think of fights like I think of some of the Richie Smullen and Reese McKee, where you had these very interesting gym versus gym. And I think like they need to go back to something like that. So yeah, so like I mean I want everyone to succeed, but we try and just call it as it is at the same time. But yeah, that's fair enough.
I think that was the break of Obama and Jude Samuel went to Bellator and all that type of stuff. And like we've never been asked for a fighter for Bellator at all, whatever. Like everyone's got their own the promotions have their own choices. You know what I mean? We just keep doing what we're doing, and the doors will knock. Like the doors will open.
One thing in particular that I guess was really impressive for me since you've come back, since after COVID when you came back, was the show at Failing the Grain, the outdoor one. Something that is very rarely seen in Ireland. Never mind, just in Ireland, in the sport in general. Is there any plans for that one to actually happen again? Because the size of that event was just something else.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was sat down extensively last year. The try and make it happen again last year. The costs are, like, would scare you, especially with the year we done it was the coming out of COVID, and then back and forward with attendance festival. They had to remember they reduced it at the very last second. COVID, lateral flow tests at the very last second, and then we had to be implemented because the council forced it upon us. Then you can't get free COVID tests and free lateral flows down the south. So I literally had to send hundreds down to all the coaches for the fans to come up. It was just the worst cocktail of events you could try and run for the first outside show in Ireland. And we pulled it off. We didn't make any money at all. It was 3,000. I think it was 2,880 tickets sold. We didn't make a single penny on the show, but it brought MMA up to a new level. And we sat down last year. The field itself, I love it. Like, we have a couple of good guys on the committee, like Harry Connolly and Kevin Gamble, who love the sport, see what it does from the grassroots up for communities, for professional athletes, and they really want to grow the sport. We sat there and had extensive meetings about having it on last year. I had a date on the 23rd of July pre-booked just in case. But when the push came to shove, the seating cost would literally scare you. Like, you know what I mean? For me as an individual with no help, the first feel I was waking up in the middle of the night, checking Ticketmaster to see how much tickets I has sold that I need to sell just to not lose my house. No, like that's as serious it was. And so when we sat down last year, the seating cost went up by another €5 per seat. So it went up to like €19.50 or something a seat. So it is. So if you take that what you're charging people in, I think the seating cost last year would have run into near £60,000 for 3,000 seats.
Crazy. No,
Liam, before you pay anybody or a member of staff or a fighter or the safety guys or whatever else, you're talking like it would have run 120,000. You know what I mean?
It's insane. That is insane.
So not just us. Now, this seating company, obviously McCallum's fight was announced in the fella, and within a few days it was pulled and put in the Odyssey. I don't know what you call it now. But it's quarter of the price for me to put Cage Conflict in the Odyssey, and is to put in the centre of the park.
Insane. But credit to you, you guys pulled it off and you did a fantastic job at it as well, and continue to do so with Cage Conflict as well. I'd like to talk a little bit closer to home, and FAI, the gym seems to be taking some great strides over the last couple of years, Liam. 2022 Severe MMA Gym of the Year, and deservingly so too as well. You know, what can you kind of attest that this recent success? Obviously, you've been there for many, many years, but you seem to be making some great strides. There's serious talent coming through the gym right now, competing for world titles. We'll hopefully see a couple of guys over in the UFC in the coming years as well. You must be delighted at how the gym is running right now and everything that's going on there.
Yes, it's like there's not a day I get up and I'm very lucky. I've always said it, regardless of success, I never work a day in my life. I go up and see my friends, I'm a train, I'm gonna do all the stuff. What I call it's not a job to me, and I think that's ultimately what it kind of rubs off people to see the passion that I have. You know what I mean? Last week when I was away with a partner in New York, Paul Hughes messaged me and Pat and says, lads, what you do for us would really appreciate it. Really a heartwarming message with why I'm in this sport for. Not all don't get me wrong. I'd like a wee bit of razzmatazz and a wee bit of few pound and, you know what I mean, have the nice lifestyle, you know what I mean. But I feel when you're in it for the people, that people see that and people buy into it, and then usually then hopefully if you get enough right people around you, that sooner or later you will be successful. You know what I mean? Over the years, I was with another business partner who was a complete opposite. Didn't just no kind of enthusiasm for the sport. Didn't showed up when he wanted to show up to get his photo stuff, but didn't want to do the hard graft. You know what I mean? And then we had different coaches and specialized coaches who were going down their own way. Where with jiu-jitsu coaches and boxing coaches and wrestling coaches, and they had their own agendas because they had outside gyms. And I just said to myself, right, we need to build this internally with people who have the same passion for myself. And that's where me and Pat have always been good friends. We trained and fought together many times. And we'll get that. We've always clicked, but we just sat down and went, right, let's fucking do this. And we'll do this right. And like, there's not a person who comes to our gym and he doesn't stay. Like, we let people cross train because we are confident what we do. And people said to me, I'm going to train on such happy days. Brilliant, go down and train and do that. Just brilliant. What can you learn? And people come to us and no hassle whatsoever, because we know that what we do is top notch, and we're not scared to let people see it. What we find is people come and go, I fucking need to be here. Now, I mean, there's Kieran and Logan joined us last week. He was only over to do a bit of training in the spar for a week, and then went, I need to fucking be here, like, you know what I mean? Which is down to him. We didn't have a conversation with him. He messaged Pat and he messaged me, mate, I want to join.
That's a testament to the gym and the atmosphere you've got going in there. Like, for me, looking from the outside in and seeing the videos, seeing sessions and hearing all your guys talk as well. And anyone who goes, like you said, to travel up to the gym to do some training as well, nothing but good things. It's a real, obviously you'll have that family atmosphere attached to almost every gym, but it seems that it's even that little bit more special at FAI at the minute.
Yeah, and I think it is just the nucleus of people around. You know what I mean? There's such a good circle of fighters, but not just fighters. As I said before, it's not even just the fighters. It's, if you go up to the classes tomorrow night, they're absolutely 60, 70 on a class, and like, say even if there's 20 or 30 fighters in this more advanced class, there's 30 or 40 grappler guys who are like bring such a big impact to our club, and they're made to feel just as welcome as the likes of Paul Hughes or Joe McCogan. They're such a big part, and they feel a part of something. So we all want the best for each other, whatever part or whatever journey in life they want to go down. The grapplers, like Pop was showing me Conor Martin won the gold today. Like, Conor trains in Yoda, has his own jiu-jitsu club, but he's up with us 2 or 3 times a week doing jiu-jitsu, just obviously. And we're so enthusiastic for others to do well in general. And I think people see that, and they see that these guys really want me to do well in life, regardless of what I want to do. We don't force people to fight. We never have asked anyone to fight. But if you want to fight, we're the place to be. And it's just a matter of people come and see it. And it's very contagious when people see that. I mean, people have their same dreams, and they see that, fuck, I actually could make a living out of this. And if I want to be serious, these guys here are the people I need to be with. And they're right.
Yeah, it was like, obviously it was a different kettle of fish in Irish mixed martial arts when you were coming up on the scene. Does it give you great pleasure that, maybe you hadn't had the experience in yourself when you were coming up, but you can actually live that experience through the lads that are coming up right now, and you have the power to make sure that they have the best experience possible as well?
Yes, when I was fighting, like, I had one amateur fight and went, fuck, this is shit. And when I hit some of my elbows, I went straight to pro, and then I beat the best light heavyweight out in Ireland, and I went, where to go from here? So I was really always in at the top end. But in them days, there was no cross-training. Number one, I think I was one of the guys at our club who actually had a boxing coach, had a Muay Thai coach. There was no wrestling coach then. I just went to one club and they tried to cover a lot of it. But I went outside and had a boxing coach and had done Muay Thai and done my own strength and conditioning. And then I was going up and I was going, I'm levels above these boys, and these guys are all Irish champions. And I'm only in this sport a wee bit. Like, and then we went over with Greg Lappin when he fought Terry Adam in Cage Gladiator, it was called then, in the Olympia in Liverpool. And I seen a Team Gabon timetable. Back when there was only like a handful of clubs in Ireland, obviously you had SBG in Dublin, you had it wasn't the EFR, it was Progressive Combat in Antrim, and a few other clubs. You know, I mean, Andy had his club, and I think it was one next gen down in Galway. I think there's only 5 clubs probably in total in Ireland. And I said to my coach, Davy Patterson, who was at that time I thought was well ahead of the game, and I went, you need to be doing this. Their timetable to have boxing coaching, wrestling coaching, different classes on every night. And I was going, this is the future of this game. You know what I mean? You need to be implementing the specialists in these areas. And then when I started our club up, I went, we need to be doing this. So we started bringing the other coaches in, because I was going out and had 5, 6 different memberships at gyms and going, right, I'm going here from a Muay Thai, I'm going here from a boxing, I'm going up here from a grappling, I'm going at DW and doing my strength conditioning and getting up in the morning doing my runs and going, this is too hard. You need to bring us under one roof. And that's what we initially tried to start in the gym. But as I said, the personalities of the coaches were pulling their own direction. Like so John O'Raw, our wrestling coach, was head of the wrestling team. He wanted all our guys just to wrestle. Come on over to my wrestling team and come on over and, and doing stuff for his almost, he was trying to push his own sport in on our gym. I was going, I'm paying you to teach my guys wrestling for MMA. And he was going, but I want your guys to wrestle for Red Hog Wrestling. And I'm going, this needs to be built up internally. So, and then over the years, we've got the coaches in place that have everything on our gym has everything under the one roof. And we're going to be moving here shortly and double the size. And this is going to just really take off like it really is.
Yeah, it really seems like I think it's pretty evident even from looking at social media of the gym that there is that, I spoke to Chris Fields before and he talked about how he likes his gym to be like almost like a GA atmosphere. And when I see the post of I think it's back Tuesdays where you see kind of I don't know, it looks about 70, 80 people on a mat at one time. Is it, you mentioned there, having a previous different partner and then now working with Pat. When I hear fighters talk about Pat McAllister, I believe he's a full-time job on top of it. And when I see this is just from social media now, but he looks like he's coaching 24 hours a day, whether it's dragging lads to his kind of his dungeon shed to roll or murdering them up the stairs, those famous stairs that they all seem to run up. Has Pat really had a huge impact on the gym as well?
Oh yeah, like Pat's my right hand man. Like me and Pat are like figures thieves. You know what I mean? You get up in the morning by 9 o'clock, and I walk with dogs before we go to work in the morning, and we probably already had 10 conversations in the morning. Voice message, did you see that fight? What about here? What about your man? How's he doing? He wasn't up at sparring yesterday. And we're hands on. Pat will be messing him. I'll be messing fighters. Where were we yesterday? Or you hurt your leg in sparring, or you hurt your leg grappling. What's it like when he be back up again? And then obviously Pat lives and breathes it the way I do. I mean, we know our roles. And I know his role, and I don't step over his role. He knows my role. And we'll help each other out as we can. Like the Senator and I had a conversation about just rule setting, and he printed them on and said, we need to go over these, me and you, and Aaron, and really iron these out, because this is how the scoring is getting done now for MMA going forward, and it's totally different. So we can change our training to implement that. But Pat lives and breathes it. You know what I mean? It's so good for me as well, because I have such a good, strong support network. And it is almost borderline obsessive, but I think you need to be like that. This is too dangerous a sport not to be obsessive. Chris and Tom are the exact same, and most of the top coaches that need to be are also showing the results. But because I think that's where it's hard, because whenever the fighters have a dream and they don't feel their coach is banning that dream as much as you are, then they will find someone who will. And I feel like that's like there's Corey fought tonight, and I have said to myself, I'm banning your dream. I want you to do well, not just for yourself. I want you to do well because ultimately I want to do well, and the gym wants to do well. So I'm banning your dream just as much as you are. You know what I mean? I'm investing in it. I'm watching videos, taking these sessions, working on stuff, and trying to implement it in training. And Pat is the exact same. He's at every night he's a group in the gym. He does classes, does privates at his house. He takes the guys and runs, and he's obsessed with it. But I think it really need to be to reach that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the family atmosphere, or the care that people have for one another was really kind of highlighted most in that video of Paul returning to the gym with the title after his most recent an incredible performance over Jordan Vucenic to really put a stamp on it. That looked incredible. Everyone kind of embracing him, and it really kind of highlighted that family atmosphere that you have. On Paul, that was one of the most incredible performances I've seen from an Irish fighter in the rematch against Vucenic. I know Ian and Quilty kind of feel the same way, or I think they do anyway. They'll tell me if they don't.
Yeah, no, we definitely do.
It's time for Paul to move on to the UFC, in my opinion. I think he's been through wars in Cage Warriors. He's continued to get better and better. Cage Warriors, I think, is a brilliant promotion, but the reality is you don't get paid a whole lot of money in there. I personally think it's time for Paul to move to the UFC. where are we at right now, or what are your thoughts on everything right now? Obviously, he officially has not been signed as of right now.
Well, being around Paul is like, you've seen his mindset, and like it was inevitable that he was gonna get to where he belongs. I mean, when he joined our gym many years ago, he was like a rough diamond. He had all the will and the want, but the skill set wasn't really in place. And again, as I said, he joined a team who wanted it just as much as he did, and obviously you get the rewards. The Chenick fight, the last one, was absolutely like, we were going to pull Paul out for 4 or 5 days from the show, because he hadn't trained in 3 weeks. He was up to his eyes in antibiotics. I hope he doesn't make me saying all this. We'll put him through 2 hard sessions on the Sunday and the Monday, and it was the acid test, because he didn't want to pull out because what happened previously will pull out and the bad publicity get. And then we went, yeah, you pass the flying colours, let's fucking do this. And he went on and put, in my eyes, one of the best performances on any guys ever put on in Cage Warriors from an Irish perspective. And he showed that he is on a different level from anyone in Cage Warriors in that featherweight division. Because Jordan the Chenick is, like, it almost reminds me a wee bit of, like, a few years ago when Whittaker and Israel, like, they were always fighting each other because he was better than him, and Whittaker was so far better than the next one. That's the way Paul and Jordan are. Like, Jordan, in my eyes, is better, head and shoulders better than everyone else in the division. What I called him, Paul, is a lot better than Jordan. I always knew that anyway. What I call, so with the promotion, we're kind of in limbo. There has been stuff on the table that hasn't suited time frame ways and that type of stuff. We're sitting tight because Paul's just back from hip injury, so we're not going to rush in. We're certainly not going to take going to be the token Irish guy on a UK UFC card, you know what I mean, just to fill a gap. Paul's in this for the long run. He will be in the UFC. It's just what's headless. Hopefully, it's what's going to happen next. We have a few other options. Paul wants to fight all the time. No, he wants to fight all the time. Well, there has been talks with the UFC and Paul. There has been different types of offers that didn't really suit time frame ways for Paul. And there is other options for Paul too. But it's just basically down to how fast we can get Paul fit, and what's he going to get? What's he willing to take the fight money wise? Because, like you say, like a Cage Warriors, that's a great promotion yard. They don't pay the bills, and Paul deserves to be paid. Like, he really does. Yeah,
like you know, when you talk about the UFC and options, some fighters get offered, you know, like a spot on the Ultimate Fighter. Some fighters get offered Dana White's Contender Series. There's different entries into the UFC. I think Paul has more than earned a direct route.
Yeah, he was, well, them two routes you're saying have been offered, and we've totally just denied them both because he's too good for it. You know what I mean? He's too good for it. We could have had Contender Series 2 years ago. You know what I mean? With Paul, and he would have get in, and he would have been saying them maybe not the best of contract on their different terms. We want to go in as Paul as a superstar, like he belongs there, and like they know that's the way they want to see him too. Like there's no beating about the bush, like, and they know that about Paul, and they're banning the Paul, and rightly so, because he does deserve it, because he puts everything in the social media. He puts himself out there. I mean, all in videos, it's hard. Like, so people don't realize you're putting yourself out there to be criticized, to be seen, be exposed, to be vulnerable. Like, it all comes with its downside as well as an upside. And Paul is the perfect package. He is, for me, he's the new era of Irish MMA, and he will be in the UFC, whatever time frame that's going to be. We don't know yet. There's a lot of moving parts. We get tomorrow, get the phone call, or in terms of the deal suits us, or well, we'll sit and wait. We're in no rush. I mean, Paul's young, and every day he's improving. Like I'm saying, like the later he signs, the more dangerous he's going to be. He is an absolute encyclopedia. He wants to learn every day. You know what I mean? The part of his game, and when we help it, and he will get there. And the longer it takes, the more dangerous he's going to be.
Liam, I'm conscious that we've had you for 55 minutes here.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
and there's a lot of other fighters in your gym. So
yeah.
First question: Reece McKee defending his title against Jimmy Wallhead in the main event of Cage Warriors Dublin. Do you think he signs with the UFC with a win there?
Oh, very if he wins, there's nowhere else for Reece to go either. Like, you know what I mean? Reece, the thing is with Reece is obviously he's got that star quality as well. and he's been there. They know him. They've dealt with him. He got a real bad hand during that time. I remember this is the middle of COVID. I don't know how much at that time because he was up with us before in now, and then when he got that opportunity, he was supposed to fight. I forget the grappler welterweight for the belt in Cage Warriors, who ended up Mason Jones fought him and won, and they got signed for the UFC. But I think it was a no-lose situation for Reese at that time fighting Kamzat because he was up against a grappler anyway. So I might as well fight a grappler on a bigger stage for hopefully better money. And I think the second fight he was getting a bit of a short straw, but I think it was just a cumulative situation where the UFC was only on once every 4 or 5 weeks because of COVID, no crowds, and they were basically trying to get internal fights. So we fought a guy who had, I think, 16 or 17 UFC fights against
Alex
the guys.
Morono.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a hard fight. I thought he fought the wrong fight. I thought he could have beat him easy. He made it hard for himself. And he got a decision against him. I think his attributes didn't do him justice there. He's went back. He's started scratch. He's up with us a lot more. He's with Jamie Crawford down on Muay Thai as well. Adding that side to his game. He's absolutely hits like a horse. He's ruthless. He wants it, and he's hungry. And with Jim Wall, Jim Wall is a legit guy. Like this is not an easy fight. Like under any stretch of imagination, we know what Jimmy's going to try and do, and we know what Reese needs to do, and that's the equation. But if he wins, in your question, if he wins, then there's no other place for him to go. Like there's no doubt about it. He's be saying there and then that night.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought one of the lads was going to ask a question there. Some other look, Cage Warriors Dublin coming up on April 29th. There's a bunch of gee, I almost said SPG there. There's a bunch of FAI fighters. There's a bunch of FAI fighters on there. One fighter who I want to get your thoughts on, who I thought has just a massive set of balls in him to take the last fight that he took against James Webb, is Paddy McCarry. I'm delighted to see him back on there. I think both himself and Sean McCormick, who stepped up and did the promotion of solid on short notice, should deservedly be on this card. Paddy McCarry, he had a tough first 2 rounds, I think, against James, but my God, he came close to finishing him in the third. Just how high is Paddy McCarry's ceiling?
Well, Paddy and I work a wee bit in the gym as well, and he lives and breathes the sport. You know what I mean? Back in maybe a year ago, he was doing different jobs trying to make his money up and all, and pay his wages. But now he's up in the gym and just works MMA 24/7. Paddy, we were actually building the cage for a cage conflict, and we got the phone call about Paddy fighting James, who I have a lot of time for and a lot of respect for, and he is who you say he is. He's a world champion, and literally he had 0.0 seconds for Paddy to say yes, give me that fucking fight, and literally that's it. There was no even here. What about this? It was just yes, 100%. Send the contract now. I'll do it. And then Chris actually said the next day at Cage Conflict is, "Are you serious about this fight?" And I went, "You bet my balls out." And he says, Paddy wants it. Let's go in. Let's go. He's got the tools, but he hadn't got the maturity, and that's sometimes. And James showed that in the fight. He done what he needed to do and where he needed to do it, and he got the decision. Even when he was rocked and he was out, many other fighters would have wilted. He was able to have that kind of world champion mentality where he just needs to do what he needs to do to survive, and he got out of that third round. I don't know how, and he deservedly won the fight. Paddy took an awful lot of things from it. An awful lot. He walks about at 86 kilo. He never cuts weight for 84. I say to him, you need to be fighting at 77, and he says, if I had like a lollipop at 77, his head's big enough at 84, but you might say it at 77. And so he employed himself as strength and conditioning coach to put more meat on, because that's what he thought ultimately was the biggest factor in that fight. Wasn't the skill level, was just the sheer physical side of it. So he has been addressing that. He's got a new strength conditioning coach. He's been bulking up, trying to cut down the rate weight, put the rate weight on. We've had likes of what Bones Jones is doing, putting the rate weight on the fight of the rate weight division. But Paddy's ceiling, he has no ceiling. Paddy could go the whole way. And the Paddy I see now, the enthusiasm, you know what I mean, and the want for it, then it's another guy like Paul that you just got to be here. You just got to show up, and it will comfy, and the doors will open. When he hits is straight and he starts knocking people out, like he will be an exciting fighter. Like there's not a guy from any other gym who come up. Like Reese knows him years ago, and Reese talking about him. There's not guys who come from other gyms and go, they all go, fuck me. Paddy McCrory he's some pup. Know what I mean?
I promise these are the last two questions I'll ask you.
No worries at all. Yeah, no worries.
An amateur fighter who I've been fascinated by since the one cage conflict show that I came up to is Kieran Coogan. Talk to me a little bit about him, and then following on from that, who is the one guy maybe in FAI that doesn't get the plaudits they deserve, and who is kind of, I'm putting you under pressure here, but to single maybe a fighter out.
Yeah. Well, I think Kieran started years ago with 10 at my kids' classes when I took the kids' classes too. Whenever I was trying to get my business partner, and I took all the MMA classes mainly, all the kids' classes and all the Jimmy classes, like the circuits and all that type of stuff. Kieran came in there with his wee friend, and his friend left, and thank God he never left, because I seen a wee bit of talent in him, and so at that age he could go either way. He stuck at it, he stayed at it, and he won a few wee kind of K1 fights, because we couldn't fight MMA at that age either. Like, so we put him in a K1, do him in a kickboxing, do him a K1 and other stuff to keep his enthusiasm, because at that age there's too much distractions, girls and whatever else, and you go out with your friends the weekend and then the sport goes to the side. So you got to give these young guys something to gear towards, something to focus on. And then obviously as he got older, like he was fighting adults since he was no age, 15, 16. His daddy used to say to me, you see who I'm fighting? Or do you see who our Kieran's fighting? Your man's got a tattoo and he's 21. My kid's only 16 or 17. And them days where it was less regulated, we were just going, but he needs to fight. It's the right weight division, and obviously it's a safe rule set. But Kieran, again, he would fight anyone, as he proved the other week at a Premier, at a drop of a hat, stepping up the last minute against a great fighter, SB, from Team Reno, Waterford, and the Bobby Mead. And Kieran took on a few days' notice, basically just because he was the only one in the whole club who's got medicals for down the south, that it was cleared. And he took it and he won. Great submission. But he's still very late. He's still immature in his body. So we're no risk for Kieran. Like, he walks around at 57 kilo. Like, if it was a 52 kilo weight division, he would probably fair to that. So he's still, he's a man in a kid's body, if that makes sense. Like, when you see the other 57 kilo guys up in our gym, they're solid, they're filled out. Like, Jared Burns and Kieran Heaney and a lot of our guys are at 57. Like I said, Ryan Curtis, their body types are totally different. Kieran has to mature that way, and he will grow into it, the match his skill set, and then like he'll not be hanging around too much longer in the amateur game either. Like,
so who's the next one? Who's the under the radar guy apart from?
There's so much. I know you're putting me on a spot. There's so much. Like, there is so much. You know what I mean? There's so much guys there that, and maybe the records don't do them justice, like the Jared Burns and all. Sean McCormick and all them boys are just need a wee bit of momentum going, and you will be talking about Evans. Like the Ryan Curtis is going to get the ball going here too soon. And the guys who have just turned pro and they're early on the pro careers, I definitely would say Scott Harvey. Like without a shadow of a doubt, Scott Harvey is an absolute animal. Like, he's came to us and his games went on tenfold. He's Paul's main training partner, and like they do 20-minute scrambles. It tires you even watching them. They never stop, and they're the key to these type of guys. They're a ball of enthusiasm. They listen to what you say. They think about it. It sinks in. They think about it, then they come back and then they implement it, and that's the difference. You talk to people and it goes in one ear or the other. They would go, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Like, I sat with Scott after sparring today. He came in after getting showered, and I talked to him about the mistakes he was making, and he was going, yeah. And you see, he was thinking, yeah, I understand what you're saying. This is what I need to be doing. Like Scott, we were after this an FCR title shot was on last night for Scott at bantamweight. Your man was 9-1, and we were like, we'll take it because I think Scott will put him away. But where does Scott go after that? We'll leave it like Paddy. Where does he go after that? He beats a guy 9-1, wins a title, and like European title, and he's 3-0. So we want to just let Scott kind of go along a wee way. When he gets to 4 or 5-0, like there's not a bantamweight, I think, and very few in Europe who would stand against him. And like obviously, like most of the best ones are on cage warriors. Kieran's an absolute Kieran Lammer, and he will be champion in the weight division. But I'd say I would put against anybody. Even now, right now, I would put him against anybody.
Yeah, letting letting him marinate is what it sounds like. Well, the good news for Irish MMA fans is they'll be able to watch Scott compete, and Jared Burns, who you mentioned, at Cage Conflict 6 Heavy Artillery on Saturday the 1st of April. So Jared Burns defending his flyweight title against George Moraru, who just fought today, actually making his pro debut.
That was an amateur. He fought amateur today.
Yeah, that was so this will be his pro debut on Cage Conflict. Yeah, and then Scott Harvey defending his bantamweight title, and a whole heap. There's actually some brilliant. I'm really liking the return of Max Lally here against Craig McGrath and the Team KF guy, Jess Paolo, Sen Coakley, and the rematch from the IMMAA National Championships, Ryan versus Keith Kyo, is another banger. So one to look forward to. We've kept you way too long. So that's
I really appreciate it, lads. I really do. And no matter what we say, we always take what you say on board, and it's great to have this kind of communication. Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and it's probably overdue to have a chat like this. And I think, look, nothing but respect to yourself and Pat and the guys up in FAI. I hope we see Paul Hughes next in the UFC. Best of luck with your continued success with the gym. We'll always be honest. We'll always try our very damn best to be fair and balanced and across the board. And I'm sure you'll be pissed off again with me in the future. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to
it. Yeah, of course. That's it.
You set the record anyway, Liam, for the longest guest on the Auld Triangle.
I talk some shit.
Yeah, you'll have to do 2 hours now the next time that you come on now to kind of top this one.
And the Netflix series, so
yeah, 100%. Really appreciate you taking the time, Liam. Obviously, it was a busy day. You came straight from Iúr Championships as well to speak with us, so we really appreciate your time, and we wish you nothing but the best in Cage Conflict and FAI as well. And we look forward to speaking to you again down the line.
Brendan, thank you very much, lads. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Liam. All
right, we're back. Thanks to Liam Shannon for spending a record amount of time with us, as we say, in the Auld Triangle. It was great to hear from him. Great getting his insight on a lot of other stuff, but we shall move on. Couple of fights happened this past weekend as well. Dennis Frimpong was defeated over at UAE Warriors, guys, in a really, really close fight. I know Dennis was very disappointed in the result. This was a close fight for me. Dennis can feel a little bit hard done by not winning it, but I honestly couldn't argue a 29-28 either way. Quilcha, what did you think of this fight watching it back?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. When I think I was speaking to you, both of you, when it was happening and didn't know how to score it, I thought Dennis was doing really well. He looked quite comfortable in there for his pro debut, especially 5-minute rounds. But tough opponent, and yeah, you could feel a little bit hard done by, but at the same time, I wouldn't call it a robbery at the same time, I wouldn't call it a robbery, but either way, back to the drawing board and on to the next one for him. He looked good, and there's a lot of promise to take from that fight.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, you're going to get tough. You're getting tough fights at UAE Warriors. It's no walk in the park over there in that promotion. And the guy he was fighting against was a tough cookie, but I couldn't call it a robbery either. I called it a very close fight. And you know what? Dennis had some great moments in it, and he'll be back again for sure. Glenn McVeigh was also defeated at the weekend. He took on Wazi Ashnina at FCR 15 and lost a unanimous decision. So yeah, Glenn, without a win in his last couple of fights now, he'll be looking to try and get back into the win column next time out, and needs a win badly, Andy, really, Glenn does, doesn't he?
Yeah, going through just, I suppose, a bit of a rough period. Well, although he went head first into this pro career from the get-go against Muhammad Mokaev, so I don't think he cares really about wins and losses necessarily. Maybe he does, I don't know, we'd have to ask him, but yeah, he takes on tough challenges, does Glenn, but it's resulted in a not a great record so far in his pro career. But look, there's always opportunities to turn it around.
100%. Going down the old Peter Quilly route with the old tough fights.
Yeah, and good experiences though, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's it. But maybe picking and choosing these fights or his opponents a little bit wiser now is probably going to be the best move for Glenn as well. We had a double set of announcements for big shows in Ireland. Cage Warriors back for the Irish second day on Saturday, 25th of November. Bellator, obviously, much people expected this as well, back in September on the 23rd. To bring back hopefully another big show there to the Tree Arena. Obviously, Cage Warriors will be in the Tree Arena as well. Moving on, We had an opponent to change for Will Fleury, who was set to take on Omari Akhmedov at PFL 1 on April 1st. Akhmedov is out through injury. In steps Christoph Jocko, former UFC veteran. Good challenge for Will Fleury here. Good opponent. A chance to take out a UFC veteran. And I'm sure Will won't mind. We spoke to him a couple of weeks back. Go back and check out that interview if you haven't seen it already. We'll talk about that fight a little bit more as it gets a little bit closer. Johnny Jitsu, John Redmond, is out of his fight with Jordan O'Neill. I know there was a bit of talking around that. That was for real fighting championships. Unfortunately, Johnny Jitsu looks to have broken a bone in his hand or knuckle or something like that, as he said on his Instagram. So he is out. Jordan O'Neill is looking for another fight. I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate for Jordan. He hasn't had the best luck when it's come to, he was supposed to be on, was it the Cage Warriors card?
He's supposed to be on the Cage Warriors card against, it was against Paddy McCurry, wasn't it?
Yeah,
because he beat Troy Gibson and he was matched with Paddy McCurry and then it fell out. Yeah, didn't happen. That's for Belfast.
Not having the best run of luck trying to get his professional career off to a start, but hopefully he gets matched up again as well. And last but not least, Team KF's Dom Norcus is going pro, 18 years of age. Andy, you today, as the time we're recording this, and he was kind of broke out today. And I'm not going to lie, I was surprised to see him going pro this early.
I think a lot of people were.
Yeah, made his amateur debut in June of last year's fought 8 times now at this stage. So he fought regularly. He got his record up there. And I mean, yeah, I can express my surprise to it, but we have to go with what his coach Chris Fields is saying, and what Chris is saying is that he's ready, and he's more than ready. And obviously, he feels he's ready if he's willing to make the professional jump as well. It's going to be interesting to see. He takes on who, Andy, and what event?
He takes on. It's Saturday, the 25th of March at Wolf Fight Promotion, and he takes on a guy called
Kambari, isn't it?
That's the one there. It is Saki Kambari, who is 1-1. But yeah, no idea who Saki Kambari is or if he's good. But I see one of the guys he's beaten, I think, has an extensive amateur career. So yeah, look, I was very surprised that he was going pro. Like I had heard murmurs that he was going to be going pro, but I didn't think it would be this soon. I was thinking that, at least a few more months or something, or like maybe a few more fights. I thought it would be a quick ascent into the pro ranks, but I was shocked that it was this soon. But look, it tracks, I suppose, with it is mad. Like it's to think he made his amateur debut in June and he's had 8 fights since then. But look, it seems Chris Fields is taken, and we just spoke with Liam Shannon, who also seems to have a similar kind of mindset of it's more about where they're at and the experience they have, and then get them in pro. So there's different opinions out there. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion on what's right. Ultimately, we'll see what happens.
We're gonna fucking find out soon.
But I tell you what, I've liked what I've seen from him so far. So it's about to get even more interesting now.
Yeah, when you hear Chris talking so highly of someone, I mean, you have to listen, really. You know what I mean? You have to trust his opinion, and fair play. I'm looking forward to seeing him make his professional debut. And, if he gets off to a flyer at 18 years of age, we're off to the races. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens.
What division is Raul Rosas Jr.? What weight class is he?
I think he's a bantamweight. So what's Dom at?
Sure, Dom could cut down to 135. He's featherweight.
Featherweight. Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Get him in straight into the UFC and fucking have the youngest ever.
There you go.
Matchup between two.
That's it. The youngest fight in UFC history. Yeah, no, it's all good. So that kind of wraps us up for some of the newsworthy items that have crossed our path since the last time we've been with you. Some of the fights that are upcoming, obviously this coming weekend, we've got two big fights involving 2 Irish fighters. And the first up on PFL Challenger Series in Orlando, Florida, is that of Nathan Kelly, who spoke with us a couple of weeks back ahead of the fight. And I'm really excited to see him going in there against Zachary Hicks. What kind of a performance are you expecting from Nathan, Quilcha?
Anything that's gonna win. No,
Thanks for that in-depth analysis there, Quilcha.
No, I wouldn't.
He's gonna throw some punches and shit.
Oh my goodness.
Look, we all know how good his jiu-jitsu is, but I think in recent times we've seen how good his striking is. And I think he's going to go in there and light him up inside one round. If that's not the case, he can just as easily bring it down to the mat and sub him. He's so well-rounded at such a young age. That's incredible. And his potential is so high that he could go really far in the PFL ranks. So I think this is just the beginning for him in PFL.
Big time. This is just the start of the journey for him, Andy. Like for me, and I've seen it time and time again, when you have the freedom to strike because you're so confident about the fight not going down, I mean, that's a dangerous kind of recipe that Nathan Kelly has. And we think we've seen that against Ben Ellis in his last fight. And I would be expecting something similar, like Quilcha said, in this fight as well.
Yeah, like I am expecting him to come out of the gates and just go hell for leather. Like the way he did against Ben Ellis was a crowd pleaser. The PFL loved it. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that again. And it's not just that one. We've seen Nate Kelly. Like I remember there was the fight against the Liverpool guy who
Shamrock.
Yeah, like that was ferocious as well. So I think we've come to expect this from Nate. And it'll probably be no different this weekend.
Yep, absolutely. Probably one of the biggest fight on the Irish map, and probably one that's flying under the radar big time is that of Ian Machado Gary, who's back in on the UFC. Wild. It's crazy. There's no buzz in Ireland for this fight, I'd imagine. It's coming up.
Has Sean done an interview with him like every week yet?
No, not yet.
He didn't do one last time.
And he didn't do one last time either.
I don't think it was for lack of trying.
They usually get me hyped for that for any of his fights.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think, honestly, I really enjoyed these interviews with Sean. And look, we've tried to see if he wanted to come on and speak with us on the Auld Triangle as well. I'd love to be able to speak with Ian. I'd love to see him just do an interview with Sean or something, because I think those interviews are always great coming up. And like Quilch just said, they always added to that kind of little bit of excitement. We haven't had that. An odd appearance on Ariel Helwani. I'm not sure if it's going to be happening on this fight week. This is a pretty big fight week, but it's a big card to be a part of, the John Jones card. He's a chance against Song Kinan to go in there. And I feel, and maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself or maybe wishing for too much, but I feel that we're at a stage with Ian where I'd like to see him go out there and try, well, not try get finished. He always tries to get a finish, but I think a finish on this one is really going to kind of kickstart him into maybe fighting on the edges of the rankings. But I think it'll be interesting to see, because he has a lot of stuff going on outside the cage, and I'm interested to see how he looks here. Obviously, we're all expecting him to go out there and get the win, are we, lads?
Of course. Yeah, well, it's as tough. I think this is just the next step in his progression, to be honest. And I know you mentioned he's got a lot going on outside the cage, but I think we got to keep in mind that, look at the UFC and how many fighters are in there that have very similar circumstances outside the cage, which they have, where they might have a newborn child after coming to the world. So a lot of them have to deal with this, and he seems, he's gotten on with training. He's balanced. He seems to be balancing things and getting the work in. So, look, I fully expect him to go out there and showcase everything that he's learned in the last few months, and hopefully get the finish. I think he's due a big finish to kind of launch him into that next step.
Yeah, I actually see this as an easier challenge to that of Gabe Green. Andy, would you be of a similar opinion?
Yeah, probably. And I think obviously Keenan Song is way more experienced, but it's every time he's come up against a top caliber fighter. And when I say top caliber fighter, like anyone who's kind of in the rankings or on the edge of the rankings, he's lost. So I expect Ian. This is a test for Ian, obviously, but it's what he should be passing. And look, Ian Gary he's a fantastic fighter, but yeah, I just want to see how he looks. As for all the reasons you've already said, he's a lot going on. I was very surprised to hear that he'd taken 4 months off training. I think he'd said himself. Completely understandable. Look, he's after becoming a father. But But at the end of the day, if you take 4 months off training, I don't know what effect that will have on one person versus the other. So
I would imagine that I wouldn't say that he was in a situation where he was doing nothing for 4 months, but there is a level of training that you need when you're preparing for a fight. So I'd say he would have been keeping in shape, but there's a difference between regular shape and fight shape. So this one has come around really quickly. Like it's almost got like it was. It was last week when I came to the realization that he was actually fighting on this card, and I was like, "Oh, shit."
I hadn't a clue until exactly as the same. There's a disconnect. Look, there's a complete disconnect right now between Ian and Irish MMA. I would say, and there's zero pressure. He doesn't have to speak to any of us. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to do it. But if he wants to push I'm the Irish fighter. I'm going to bring all the Irish fans over. You need to connect. You have to connect with the Irish fans. Yeah, and it's look, he's got a lot going on though. So ultimately, just keep winning. And I'm very excited to see him. I think he's the best fighter Ireland has. And yeah, I want to see Gary fight.
Oh no, I'm excited.
I want to get excited about this.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think I am excited to see him fight. I'm looking forward to seeing him getting in there. But maybe it's the kind of process that we're going through with just this juggernaut of MMA with events on after every weekend. You have very little time to kind of sit back and take in a card. It's like right up on top of you.
It fucking should be something that we should be like. This should be Ireland should be going mad for this fight. Like, you know what I mean? When it's Ian, like an Irish fighter on the John Jones return pay-per-view is a huge spot. Like this should be, everyone should be buzzing for this. And for whatever reason, it's just flown under the radar.
Yep, that's it.
But maybe that'll change Friday night.
He goes out there and gets a knockout, and
night.
I think, or gets a finish, and I think he's very capable of doing that in this fight. It might be a little bit. He needs that y'all must have forgot moment. That's what he needs this Saturday night, and we should move on. We'll talk about that in more detail. We're going to whip through the rest of the fights. Obviously, the next time around, we're going to break these down in a lot more detail as well. Ger Harris will return on Friday, March 10th, a couple of weekends from now. Cage fight series to take on Florence Stan over in Austria. Very, very excited to see Ger Harris, like one of the best upcoming prospects in Irish MMA right now, a 125-pound division too. I mean, to see someone as strong and as powerful as Ger at 125, I'm very excited to see his career progression, and he's on UFC Fight Pass already, so that's a good place to be if you're looking to get to the UFC. That's what I'd have to say about that. Norman Park steps in to Hexagon MMA to make his debut for that promotion on Saturday, March 11th, the very next day after Ger takes on Junior Argolo, who is 16-10. So nice to see Norman back fighting a normal MMA fight where there's no.
He's not fighting in Poland.
yeah. This one's in France. This is actually an MMA fight. But not hating on Norman at all.
No, he's a legend.
I loved what Norman was doing, and he's a fucking.
He could be still in the UFC.
He shouldn't have been let go, in my opinion. I thought it was very hard done. So look, he went out there and he did his thing and he got paid his money. He's back in there in Hexagon. I'm looking forward.
He was getting offers of getting into that tournament in Octagon as well. There was when John Hathaway pulled out.
Yeah. So unfortunately, he said that himself. He couldn't enter in because of this fight. Do
you know what? Shoot me if anyone from Hexagon MMA is listening, but I kind of wish he did, because him in one of those Octagon shows, like their crowds are mad. He would fit right in there.
He would. And you never know what happens in that tournament, lad. Someone might get injured. They might be in. Quilty, what were you want to say there?
Like, these Hexagon shows are on the way up, and they're at nowhere near the caliber of what Andy's saying about those Octagon shows. Like, no one really knows about them, to be honest. It would have made maybe more sense, and his personality would have fit that kind of Octagon vibe so much more after all the KSW stuff that he went through before. So, maybe there's time to.
Yeah, on the same card, Martin McNulty was set to fight Irish, French-based fighter. Was supposed to take on Mansour Kaslavia in Hexagon. He's been forced off the card, unfortunately. So, we won't get to see him. Ryan Spillane sets to return for a one-night heavyweight Grand Prix at Levels Fight League. Excited to see Ryan back in action. Obviously not the best start to his professional career. Picked up a win in his last fight. Has a good chance here in the heavyweight Grand Prix. That's Saturday, March 11th. March 12th, Yanderson Castro takes on Elliot Jenkins at Levels Fight League in Amsterdam. Is there 2 events on in a row, guys?
Two nights in a row.
Oh,
2 nights in a row.
2 nights in a row.
It was kind of hard to get full information about that first night, but it's 2 nights in a row, all right.
Yeah, because we have Castro on the 12th. Obviously, Ryan is on the 11th of March, and we have Andreas Binder.
Andreas and Janderson are on the same card.
Yeah, so that's on March 12th, where Andreas Binder takes on Chris Stringer there. So a good veteran test for Andreas going in against Chris Stringer at Levels Fight League 8 in Amsterdam. And now we'll take a deep breath. It's the Auld Triangle experience this week.
There was one more that I forgot to write down here. Was just a bit of news. It's not upcoming right this second, but John Mitchell is back in action, fighting in. I don't know where this. So he's fighting in
Matrix Fight Night.
Fight Night, but they've put on events in India and they've put on events in Dubai. And his last fight was in India, but he lives in Dubai, so who knows? But he's fighting some guy ahead of his PFL debut. So
nice, fair play.
Random, but yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it for episode 27, guys. It's a long one this week. We do appreciate it if you've hung in with us for the entire almost 2.5 hours. But look, it was great to have Liam on. Look,
yeah,
those long we can do the smaller interviews and the tight knit ones, but I think every now and again when we have one guest on to do those long format interviews to really get a feel of, I personally enjoyed that one with Liam today. And it
was good to iron some things out.
We needed to iron some things out,
yeah,
and sort it out with Liam. But he's doing some fantastic work at FAI and the same with Cage Conflict, and we'll be talking about that show and hopefully with him again down the line. And we'll be talking to you, everyone who's listening, for the next episode of the Auld Triangle in just a couple of weeks' time. We'll be getting geared up for the national championships. We'll be going through all of the reaction to all of the fights we just talked about and any other news that pops up in Irish mixed martial arts in between now and the next time that we record. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hitting the like button on YouTube channel. Follow us on all social media platforms. Like I said at the start, follow Andy and Quilly and myself over on Twitter and on Instagram as well. We are always there talking all things MMA. We'll be back again next week, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and big up to Irish MMA. Quilly, see us off.
Slán go fóill.